All right. Yeah, Todd just said he was ready. So apparently we're ready for a this week's installment of Pontificators. It has been a while, you guys. I have been busy and busy and busy. So things have slowed down a little bit today. So I got some people, some Pontificator buddies to agree to come on and do a live show and entertain you, you blokes, you peoples. And so hey Todd, was this a show that we started a while ago? Aren't we the are we the grandparents of this whole shindig?
Yeah, we had you on a show that I was doing with Chester, and we came up with the idea of doing this while you were on with us, or like in the after show. You came
Yeah,
up,
it just kind of happened, right?
yeah. It was just good, it was a good show that we did with you, and we had a kind of a good sort of communication rapport kind of thing. And so it just seemed, there are things that Chester's a natural at, and not to give him too much credit, but he can carry a good interview. He can carry a good show, and when he's really, that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
This comic book news thing that he perpetrates as some kind of fraud over there on his own channel, that's just whatever it is. It is.
So are you saying that's BS?
Oh, it's terrible. Absolutely.
Well, we got the young lad known as Zach Bradley. What's up, brother?
Hey, long time no see, Art and Joe and Todd. It's good to see you, brother.
Zach, is you and I are probably going to be seeing each other a lot because I'm going to be in your neck of the woods probably in December if everything goes off without a hitch.
Yeah, no. If you need anybody to help you move when you get down here, just hit me up. I'm not doing anything. I'm literally not doing anything.
That was very generous. Most people here in California run for the hills. They like go. No.
That's one thing in Texas you're going to realize is that the people here are nice.
Nice change from California.
Well, I just found out like some of your tax laws and things like that. And holy shit, man, I cannot believe I didn't move to Texas 10 years ago. And I'd be so much better off financially. You guys got some killer, like California is like, oh, we're progressive. You guys actually have progressive tax laws. Wait a minute, albino turned into a little graphic there. Yeah, but you guys actually have progressive laws because from what I understand, you can contest your property taxes. Mm-hmm. So you can hire, I guess there's firms, right, that you can hire, and then they can bring that your case to a judge. And I guess it's, taxation with representation. So if it's wrongful and they up your taxes, a judge can kind of override that. So they don't have anything like that in California.
Yeah, no, California is like socialism. Guys are all about that socialism up there.
Yeah, and also what I like about Texas is like buying a house. If you guys don't know, we're selling our house here. Anybody in the chat? We're selling our house here. We're going to move to Texas. And so one thing that Texas has up on California is when somebody makes a bid for your house in Texas, when your house goes into escrow or goes off the market, you have to pay those people, the seller, for every day that it's off the market because they're actually taking the house off the market. So then they get monetary compensation. In California here, the seller gets nothing. Like you take the house off the market, and if the buyer decides just to not do it,
you lost those days. You lost
days. And sometimes that makes a big difference. If you're kind of trying to build some energy. And I guess it looks bad if your house is on the market for too long. I didn't know that until we started, trying to do this one. But yeah, Texas it's the place, baby. Yeah. So
you're gonna die when you start, filing like your business taxes as an independent. You're gonna be like, wow, I'm not getting penalized for working on my own. This is amazing. Yeah. That was one thing that when I realized, I was like, wow, I'm almost like they're almost paying me to be an independent. So that was kind of crazy.
Keep bragging, you jerk.
Hey, who's near their laundry room?
That's me. Hold on.
No.
You hear in the background.
Yeah. I hear.
Let me go do. Let me go fix.
Go get that goddamn quarter out of the dryer, will you?
Oh my gosh, Todd's fired up. You know that can only mean one thing. This is going to be a great show. So, Joe, how have you been, man? It's been a while since we hung out on a Pontificator. So, fill us in.
No, I've been good, man. Just really busy with comics work. Been really busy getting my project together. I got my creative team assembled and had something of a, I guess you could say, my first real obstacle in the process. Everything was going so well. I knew it had to happen sooner or later. And so I thought I had a graphic artist locked down and thought I was getting some graphic art that I could use for a new YouTube channel and a new Twitter handle and all that good stuff for the company. But it hasn't really worked out so far. So I'm back on the hunt for a graphic designer that's really good at logos. And but everything else has been going really well. Can't complain.
Check with the guy that you turned me on to as far as graphic designer. So it didn't work out.
No, everything looked great, real promising, but then it hasn't worked out after that. I haven't heard or seen anything in a while, and I've really got to get things moving. So
he's a really nice guy, but he's really flaky.
Really nice guy, and he's excellent at what he does.
Yes, he is. That's true too.
Unfortunately, I'm on a schedule, and I've given him a lot of grace in getting back to me. But I've got to move on, so I'm on the hunt for another graphic designer.
So you guys heard this. So if you're a graphic designer and you want to work with some Thunder Buns, get on it, man. So Todd, how you been? I guess you're not Florida man, so I don't know what that means. Do you want to explain?
Not a Florida man.
Oh, not a Florida man. Oh, okay.
Just the Florida man artist.
You're just the Florida man artist. Okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to Florida?
Oh, I've been to Florida a lot. I lived in Florida.
Oh, okay.
Which I told you, but that's all right. You forgot. You're old. You're old. What are you gonna do? So anyway, graphic art, right? As far as logos go, like I've done like maybe 10 really, really good logos in my life, but it's a hit or miss. A logo is something that you have some sort of specific in mind, and then you convey that, and then boom, then there's lightning that happens, and it's perfect. And then sometimes it's a complete miss. And I always used to be like, buy it if you like it. Because it honestly doesn't take long to create a logo or do that kind of thing if you have the right software. So I always approach that in that way. Like, if I hit it, it's a home run. You pay for it. If it's not, go to the next guy. Because I don't consider myself like like the end all be all and that kind of a thing. It's just
as a default in the day, I used to do logos mostly for rock bands, local bands in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s. And so I remember sharing a story like this with Danny Mickey when he worked in the studio here, Hack Shack Studios. And he's like, I used to do the same. And I was like, yeah, well, what bands would I know any? He goes, yeah, there's a band called Rat that I did the logo for. And I was like, Rat, the Round and Round Rat, the hair metal band? He's like, yeah.
R-A-T-T, baby.
Yeah, R-A-T-T, yeah. I was like, oh, that's cool, man. So yeah, it's a way better logo story than I had. But I just remember, and you might be able to back me up on this, Todd, is especially with bands, they're all creative and they have these high concepts, right? And I remember there was this band, Fortress, and they're like, we want a castle in the logo, and we want chains, and we want a drawbridge, and all. I'm like, it's a logo, dude. It's not a image. It's not a drawing. And it's like, well, just see what you can do. So I remember I tried to make some of the lettering look like it's kind of a castle, and then I just put like a little bit of chain, like, but not that it would obscure the logo. And they're like, no, we don't like it. We want a full-on castle with a drawbridge and chains. So I ended up doing it, and it looked like complete and utter shit. Like, you couldn't read the damn logo. Like, well, it looked like a castle with chains all over it, but you couldn't read Fortress. I still remember one of their big lyrics. They, like all good bands, they have like their name in the lyrics, so, or the song is named after the band. So they had a song called Fortress, and I remember it was like Fortress. It was like a chant, like one of those anthem songs, like Fortress, no one shall defeat the wall. Fortress, all for one and one for all. Fortress.
Oh, that's actually cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, like so other than not doing logos, Todd, so you're busy drawing Florida Man the comic?
Yeah. I'm past the halfway point, which is good.
Excellent.
And man, it's it's just one of those things. Like, I can't imagine. I've always thought of myself, right, as far as like, get on a book and get on there for a year, and that would be quintessential. But now that I've done Florida Man for 30 pages, I'm like, could I really sit there and draw Superman for 12 months without getting like to the point where like, oh my God, I've drawn his face so many times.
Oh, you're talking to the wrong guy, because repetition is how I made my mark in this industry. Yeah. So
you just gotta put away that, like, this isn't fun. This isn't fun. This is work.
yeah, it's work. Yeah, exactly. It's I used to call it, like, you go into machine mode. You go into complete and utter machine mode after a while. So it really is just like you wake up, you have your set hours, and you just put your head down and you just very mechanical. You just get things done. And after a while, you keep building every day and you get faster and faster at it. But you have to kind of keep the same rhythm. You have to keep the same thing you do every day, so you can build speed and you can get things done. So yes, it is very repetitious. Welcome to the world of comics.
You've drawn Superman's head on this angle, all right, on page whatever. Do you go back and go, I got to do this angle again? I'm just going to go look at what I did before.
Well, if you look at everybody that is successful in monthly comics, and you'll see the bag of tricks, you'll see the repetition in it. Especially like ones that come to mind specifically are like, you look at Dan Jurgens. I always go, that's the upshot, that's the downshot, that's this, that's that, and he's got that vocabulary, and he just kind of keeps doing it. And then Mark Bagley is the same. Like, he's just got his bag of tricks, and every month, it's kind of the same bag of tricks. So yeah, we have that. And so let's touch base with Zach, because I don't think we have Zach for very long tonight. Are you going to do Drawn and Quartered? Is that what you're doing, Zach?
You're muted.
Mute, unmute.
You got me for another 30 minutes. But yeah, no, since you've been gone, it's been very interesting. Got my car totaled, and that was fun. But got a new car, so that's good. And I've been doing a lot of 3D work.
Really?
So
what kind of 3D work?
Fun.
Who?
I do anything 3D for video games. So
sweet. How's Goma
like what I
coming?
do on the side.
You're already right?
Part two is coming along. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yep. Totally fulfilled. So 2 is being written and laid out and everything. And then I'm just doing
Zach, I'm going to send
stuff,
you a message in a couple of days. I wanted you to have a chance to get out of the craziness of fulfillment, but the Postal Service abused my copy of Golma.
Oh man, yeah, no, I got a few of those, and I'm getting all that ready to send out, like, replacements. So yeah, just hit me
All
up.
right, cool.
So you guys,
Was yours? Did your cover start peeling off?
No, I had a new one with this. I haven't had very many books get damaged,
Mhm.
but when they are, it's usually amazing. And with Golma, everything was perfect except for the top left corner of the spine. And I kid you not, the spine is ripped. I don't know. I don't know how it happened.
Whoa!
That whole corner of the package got crushed, but it's not like the book folded on the corner. It just on the spine ripped all the way through.
What in the world happened?
that paper's heavy duty, and then it's plastic coated usually, so it's not that easy to rip one.
I've never seen it before in my life.
Wow. Damn postal.
Yeah, no, it hit me up. Remind me that I'll put you on the list of
Sweet.
resends. Yeah.
But everybody know that most of those books, those Goma books, are packed with care. It's just the postal service. Sometimes they just get crazy and they do crazy stuff and they destroy things.
Yeah, no. Well,
I think they do it out of spite. Like I've seen some stuff that's been sent back to me, and I'm like, "Holy crap! This looks like you had to have done it on purpose." You know?
Yeah.
well, I had it was weird. Someone contacted me and they had, I guess, like the postal, like their mailbox was like out kind of it was outside. It's in California or Oregon. So it's really, really, really hot. And they the cover started bubbling because it was so hot and it got left in the mailbox for days.
Oh.
And then all of a sudden there was all these bubbles and they took a picture and they showed me and there was like all these bubbles all over it. And I was like, oh my gosh.
I had a complete art book, the Oodles of Doodles book that I had, and it was completely submerged. It couldn't have been rain. Like this thing was soaked. The inside, it was soaked. Like somebody dropped it in a body of water. It was insane. And the guy, he contacted. He goes, "It's kind of wet," and I was like, "It's wet." And I go, "Send me some pictures." It was soaked.
Yeah, that's not kind of wet.
Yeah, it's like drenched. Like every page, it looked like not only did it get dropped in water, but it had set in water. Like if you just drop it and pull it out real quick, it's not going to be that wet. This thing was soaked. Like when he opened it up, it must have just poured out water. It'd be like one of those cartoons where like a fish comes out as well. Like not just the water, but a fish and some algae.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, you guys. We got a special guest, and I'm going to bring him in. He's been waiting very patiently, and so he's kind of he's been in Comicsgate, he's been out of Comicsgate, and now he's back in Comicsgate. So we have Nasser Rabati. How are you, brother?
Art, it's been 84 years, man.
So what are you saying? Well, if it's 84 years, then you're old too. That's
right. And then I'm your age.
Traveler. Yeah. How you been, man?
Oh man, I've been good. Been writing a lot, of course, getting a lot of writing done, man. How have you been?
Good. Do you have any stories to tell about destroyed Trixie Kane books or anything like that?
Oh no, everything arrived in perfect condition. I've only had to replace one book between both of my campaigns, and that's because on Stardust we had these posters, so of course I couldn't put it in a Gemini. I had to put it in a bigger envelope, and I guess whoever got it, their mailman sort of bent it, so the book got bent. So that's the only time I ever had to replace the book for damages, of course. Maybe one or two packages might have gotten lost before, but as far as damages, that's the only time I ever had a damaged book was one time on Stardust.
Wow, you're a lucky guy. Like I guess with like the Chrono and Black and White, we've been pretty lucky as well. But there has been like a handful where we really had trouble with was posters as well. So when we did the Black and White Volume 1 Second Chance, the posters, like I don't know, it's like post office is just like they accept the challenge and they go out of their way to destroy.
Right.
Like this was heavy duty, like I don't know, 4-ply cardboard. It wasn't easily destroyed, and we got some that were kind of like twisted and unraveled. We had ones that were smashed the ends. Like it was nuts. Like you had to
That's
go out.
that's funny because I really do think they go out of their way just to destroy every package they can. Like they'll step on it, bend it. Like, they don't care.
Yeah, I completely agree. I only had one, like it was with Marvel artwork, and this was really, really sad. It was
Oh no.
an Adam Kubert page, Ultimate X-Men, and we got the box back, but it didn't have the page in it. So somebody actually must have recognized the names on the the shipping, and opened it up and took the page. It got to its destination, but there was no page in it.
That is sad.
That broke our heart. And so I always made 11 by 17, like really good, like backup copies. So there's a page in one of those books that's actually printed off the Xerox versus the original page. So I'm glad I did that. Otherwise, we would have had to redo that page from scratch.
Did you ever know people art back in the days where you had to FedEx everything to each other? Did you ever know anybody who used aliases to try to prevent that? Because I used to hear stories about it, but I never actually met anybody who did it, where they wouldn't, if they were well-known artists, they wouldn't put their real name on it because they were afraid of people stealing their artwork. So they,
it's weird because I mean, most of the people that I know and that I run with, I mean, we're pretty humble. I mean, we're very surprised when anybody even knows who we are. You know what I mean? So I don't think most people think that way. You know, like to prepare for something like that. There are a few artists that I know that, you know, are like that, but not a lot. So I've never encountered it before.
It's funny to me, like how humble you are, because you're like one of the only artists that I've met where I like sort of like freaked out. Like that first stream where I think Mike brought you on to Ethan's channel, I think is how it went. And like you were on, and I was just like, oh my goodness, it's Art T Bear. I really love this dude's art.
Was it you that went through your collection?
Yes.
You were like, here's one. Yeah, you're just pulling out the books. Yeah,
I did that too. And the sad part was like, just like a couple months before that, I had to sell some comics because I needed money. And I don't know what that sound was, but I sold some comics, and I had some Superman books you worked on, and I sold them. And then, of course, like a month later, everybody's like, Art T Bear's here now. I'm like, oh my goodness, I just sold his books.
I don't have those books anymore. Yeah, but you had a lot of John Malin books too, so that was pretty.
Oh yeah.
You got the Cable run.
Yeah, I had the Cable run. It was a really good run. It's one of the only good Marvel comics from the last, I don't know, 25 years.
Who was the writer on that? Do you remember?
Ed Brisson, I believe.
Okay.
Brisson. I've heard people say it different ways. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, that was the writer.
Yeah, it was a good run. So I want to. One of the things we do, Nasser, now on the show is this was Joe, and I think Todd backed him up on it, where we give a little spotlight to a new campaign, like Comicsgate campaign. So we have Thomas Moira. Is that how you say it?
I was taking a look at that with Mike.
Yeah. So we're gonna give Stefani Rene a little bit of plug. You guys can say. Like just praise it because it is brilliant looking, and you should be seeing it right now. So yeah, this is Stefani Rene's new project, and it's Thomas Moria, Wizard for Hire. He's at 13,371. He's got 346 backers. That is not easy to do, you guys. He's got 12 days left. He is Comicsgate through and through. He's from Brazil. But if you follow him on Twitter, he's taken a lot of shit recently, as most of us in Comicsgate do from time to time. So yeah, he's taking his lumps right now. And if we can get some eyes on his new book, which is gorgeous, and a few backers, I'm sure he would greatly appreciate it. And I'm not sure. Because he is Brazilian, I know when I talk to him, like in the written, you know, like when we email and stuff each other, his English is perfect written. So I don't know if maybe he's not as good with the speaking of English.
Well, I was told he didn't really speak English, or that it was maybe a little bit broken, so he might be a little shy. I don't know. I would like to see him on streams.
I've streamed with him a couple of times. And
Oh, you have?
Okay. Yeah. So it's a case where he's a lot more comfortable writing English than speaking it. And So when I was the other thing too is that where he's at in Brazil, my understanding is that the internet connection is not very reliable. So when I was streaming with him for, I don't know, he was on for maybe an hour or so, and the resolution of the video kept going in and out, and it was hard for him to kind of keep up with the conversation that way. But the other time that I streamed with him recently, it seemed like his connection was better, and it was just, I think, trying to push through the discomfort of trying to formulate all of your thoughts and then translate it in your head, speak in that other language.
Live streaming is a little off-putting. I mean, I'm still not 100% with it. It's
Oh yeah, I get nervous every live stream. Like I was reading something the other day on a stream, and people in the chat were like, "You're awful at reading these things," and I'm like, "Sorry guys, you get real nervous." Like, because I was reading something on Kiwi Farms, and I kept saying and everybody pointed it out in the chat. I'm like, "Guys, you don't know how nerve-wracking it is. There's like 30 people here. I got to read this and be entertaining, and keep up with you guys. Like, it is scary."
Yeah, that's why for a long time I didn't use the camera, because I was like, I just look weird. So I was more self-conscious, like seeing myself on the camera. And so then I got over that, and so on and so forth. I think the big breakthrough for me was like, you're going to say stupid shit. You just are. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to say dumb stuff. So just forgive yourself up front and just know that that's going to happen. And then if people rib you in the chat, you just got to roll with it, because it will happen. So, yeah, I think what I'm going to do now, I didn't know that, Joe. I'm going to invite him onto a Hacks chat and just give him a big old spotlight, because this book looks incredible.
Yeah, and he's, I don't remember exactly which time zone he's in. I think he might be 1 hour ahead of Eastern time. I want to say it's either 1 or 2 hours. So it's not that bad if you can stream, in our late morning, early afternoon. I think it's definitely doable.
Yeah, I'll try to work that out, because he definitely needs a spotlight here. And if I can do anything for him and help him out, I would like to do that. Because one thing, I didn't even realize this, because like 15 years ago, one of the early Chrono Mechanics stories, Stefani Rene did the color work for it. So when he started showing up in my chat, I was like, that name sounds familiar. And then I just said, I typed in, I said, have we worked with each other? And he goes, yeah. And he didn't tell me what. And then it dawned on me. I was like, I think we worked together on Chrono Mechanics. And he says, yeah, we did. And I was like, holy crap. And so, yeah, it's a really small world. And once again, you know how I say I've worked with everybody. I've worked with everybody.
Whatever that monster on the screen is, I really love it.
It's cool, right? It's a great design.
I don't know what it is or what it does, but I just love it. I love that it's got one gigantic eye eating up the face, and it shows so much expression with it too. And then those claws, like, it's just really creepy. I just dig it.
What I'm hoping with the design is that eye detaches from the body, because if you look, it's got like these claws, like legs.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of thinking that maybe it detaches from the torso, which would be cool and extra creepy.
I wonder if Bob has any insight into that. He's in the back room, if you can bring him in.
Oh yeah, let me come back. Yeah, I'd love to get Bob's take on this. Hello, Bob.
What's up, dude? Sorry I'm late. I was gonna say that monster kind of reminds me of like 50 schlock horror meets Lovecraft.
Oh my gosh, that's perfect. Yep. Yeah, that's perfect, because it's fun,
right?
And scary kind of at the same time. Yeah, the big eye is kind of campy or corny.
Yeah, like that was that thing from This Island Earth. Remember that old 50s movie, man?
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of like that, but like if it was made today, so like it looks all gnarly and crap.
Yeah, it's very detailed. So yeah, you guys, Stefani Rene is one of the good guys, and he is taking his lumps right now on Twitter. So go back, Thomas. Moria, I think.
Yep.
Thomas Moria. Yeah, that book's been on my radar for a while.
I always want to put an extra like syllable or whatever. Moria.
Bob, it's nice to see you. It's like I'm just having reunion after reunion these days.
Hey man, it's I avoid that stuff like the plague, man. So
What, you avoid reunions?
I avoid like people talking like I'm Zero Drum. It's like, dude, no, I really am. So it's like I'm out, but it's good to see you, man.
Yeah.
I still think you got one of the best icon pictures ever, man.
Oh, yeah. It's creepy. It's creepy in two ways. Like he's like kind of creeping on the girl, like in a almost like a sexual way, but he's also like a monster. So,
right. Dude, I miss old school Freddy.
I'll tell you that first Friday the 13th is brilliant, and Dream Warriors is brilliant.
You mean Nightmare on Elm Street?
You mean Nightmare on Elm Street? You just triggered every horror fan on the planet.
Nightmare Before, yeah.
Nightmare Before. Use the Force, Harry.
Yeah. Nightmare on Elm Street, yeah, the first one, and then Dream Warriors just for the sheer camp of it.
Dream Warriors was fun. Dream Warriors was probably the last of the really, really good ones.
Oh no, Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Yeah, see, I don't really hold that. See, this is the discussion to have for like a horror show, man, because it's like I don't really hold that as part of the main Freddy storyline because it's not set in that universe.
It both is and isn't in a way, but Bob, you're welcome to come on my channel sometime and talk about it.
Oh yeah, we'll make it stupid up in there.
Yeah. But what the topic, the Pontificator topic for today, and we're just going to talk this to death like we usually do, is you hear a lot of talk about is print dead? Print is dead. You see bold, and I a lot of people, I think they use it to clickbaity. And because I looked up a lot of stuff, and people use it as clickbait, but I'm not sure everybody is signing off on that print is completely dead. So I thought it might be a fun topic to talk about in a general way, print as a general, like newspapers, magazines, things like that.
You're talking about periodicals. You're talking about monthly, coming out every week. Yeah,
exactly. And then like it seems like the only thing that is to take its place is digital. Like the only future that is designed, and that I know that that's why this is going to be an interesting conversation, because there's people that go back and forth. They're like, no, digital is not the way, especially with comic books, because there's the collector aspects and there's a lot of other things to consider. But in lieu of the print medium, what is the savior? You know what I mean? Where is everything going to go? Let's just say that when they say print is dead, let's just say it is dead. So for the sake of argument or the sake of discussion, then what's going to take its place? Like, is it going to be digital? Is it going to be some form of internet comic books or internet newspapers, internet, like you say, Todd, like periodicals? Like, what really is going to take its place? Well, if indeed it is going to die.
Well, I don't think it'll ever be entirely dead, but I think people got to stop being so afraid of digital. Like, that's just the thing I see is everybody's like, oh no, it better never go all digital. Like, there's absolutely no problem with it being digital. In fact, that could even be better for all of us, because then we'd have no printing expenses. So could you imagine, like, your campaign's over and then you just send out the link and then you're like, well, the rest of the money's mine, Yeah.
Well, dude, as a creator, Nasser, I fantasize about that all the time. Like, if I didn't have to warehouse these books, if I didn't have to print, if I could just take a printer out of the equation, everybody who's watched my channel knows my past with printers.
Well, have you thought about doing print on demand?
I have not. So I'm doing offset printing just because it's gorgeous when it's done right. It's so high end. But I'm not. I never say never. So if there is something that could take its place and looks as good, then yeah. But I've just noticed that the printers are just. They just print whatever the file is. They don't really care about the settings, and they just print it. And inevitably, almost everything is dark. One of the chrono printers, actually, the colors, and Joe saw it, they weren't even accurate to the original color schemes. Like they were completely different. Like the purples were blue, like it was really, really off. So if I could bypass that, Nasser, and if I could just go straight digital, so what we see on the screen, as artists, we could just send that to the consumer. God, that would, for me, that would be perfect.
Like I'm gonna do that eventually with my comic books, but as far as like my novels, like people buy it on Kindle and they have it instantly. And as far as like my paperbacks, like people get that in 2 days from Amazon. I haven't done that with my comics yet. I plan to in the future when I have more content available, because right now I only have Stardust, which is a one shot, and then Trixie, which is book 1, but there's no book 2. So it almost feels like there's no sense in putting them up yet print on demand if there's not the next book for them. But print on demand, I mean, people have been doing it more and more, and I have a few comics that I've got from Amazon that people use print on demand for, and they look good. Of course, they're not going to be the highest quality when you use a regular printer and you have all those fancy options. But as far as having it constantly in print, something that might be on the cheaper side, just to bring in readers and have the ad for your YouTube, have your Twitter handle in it, and to direct people back over here that buy it. I mean, that's definitely something I want to do eventually with my comics when I just have more of them to put up there. But it's really cool because like I have boxes of my comics, but as far as my books, those only get printed when they sell. So I really like print on demand because I don't have to send any myself. People don't have to worry about customs, if they live in another country, because Amazon's got their printers all over the world. So that's what I want to do eventually for my comics, is just when I get it.
Didn't you also do an Indiegogo just digital, like one of your books that you just did a campaign?
Yeah, I did. What happened was my first campaign, Stardust, I told everybody like when it was ending, but I only had probably a few hundred followers at the time, so the word really didn't get out. And then so the last day it came, it ended, and a bunch of people were messaging me like I didn't know it was ending. And I was putting in my print run order, so I didn't want to like reopen anything, because we were going to get it out then. I knew I was going to have extras, but I just decided to do, like, for 1 week, I think we did a digital only campaign, and that got us another $500 or so. I think $550. So yeah, for just a week we did do that digital campaign, and it worked pretty well.
Well, after you did that, I thought it was a pretty ballsy campaign, and I must say there was a side of me that wanted to do the same. And that's why this conversation is going to be interesting, because I really want to see what Todd has to say about it, because I know Todd has some good insight on digital. But for me, it as a creator, like we've already pointed out, it seems very attractive because there's no warehousing, that you don't have to deal with printers, and then you can get it to the consumer a lot faster because you don't have to go through the post, and also you can create a less expensive product. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
But with comic books, there is a collector aspect, and there are a lot of other components to it. And I want to turn this over to Todd and see what your insight on this is. Todd, like, what do you think?
Well, now you got me kind of thinking about this idea of could you like, it just is crowdfunding. I'll separate crowdfunding from what Marvel and DC and all that does, because I have my thoughts on that too. But as far as crowdfunding, could you crowdfund digital versions where people are getting a discount? Like, say you got a 6-issue thing, right? And you're going to do all the 6 issues as digital files, but for each issue you buy, you get a discount, because at the end you're going to put together as a graphic novel or as a trade a printable version. So you buy in, you keep buying, you want, and your story's good, then you're kind of prove out exactly the amount of need that you're going to need when you do launch that campaign. You kind of have an idea. So I've been thinking about this, and like, is there a way to do this and do this smartly? Because let's face it, we're kind of just doing it. We're winging it. We're going, well, this guy does it good, and that guy does it good, and Ethan does it great, and we're all winging it. But could you figure it out and go, you know what? Yes, buy my first issue. It's digital, second, third, fourth, fifth, and then we're doing a trade or a graphic novel. It's going to be physical that you bought. You get a discount for every one that you bought. So you get 10%, or maybe it's 5%. So you bought 1 through 6, you could end up with 25% or 30% off of the physical.
It's an idea. Something else. Pixel Trader brought up a good argument here. He said if they're going to continue to do physical, they need to do something kind of like Shonen Jump, where you have like a collection. Like instead of buying one book, you're buying like 10, and they're all collected. And then also we keep talking about how they need to find a way to make it cost effective. It needs to become, go back to the days when it was a disposable medium. And that's the way you can do that.
You can do with digital, because one thing that it almost demands is like, well, Bob, how do you feel? Do you think that things have changed? The landscape on the internet has changed because most people don't want to pay for anything. Like they don't want to pay for music. They don't want to pay for movies. They don't want to pay for, periodicals.
What they will pay for though is convenience. Okay. So if there's I can't remember the guy's name, but remember that program that he showed us where people were making comics specifically for digital format of their cell phones.
Yeah.
Okay. Remember when we saw that, and that was a pretty interesting program that he showed us. And if they do that right, I think that's something that could really take off. Now, I don't think that that's going to work for traditional comics, the way that they're made today. But that's definitely a way that you could take digital and make it into something that's convenient, because everybody's got a freaking smartphone,
right?
You know what I mean? Exactly. So that's one possible medium right there. The
well,
other
accessibility as far as like the computer versus specialty shops, or even like old school like 7-Elevens and liquor stores where most of us got our books from. Those avenues just really aren't there anymore,
and they're not going to come back.
Yeah,
okay, exactly. They're not going to come back. So you look at where are these type of things healthy, and why is the European market healthy? It's because that book, which is a graphic novel, can sit on a shelf. It can take up that space, and it can take up that space for the whole year. Whereas when you're shuffling comics in and out, and they're not being bought, you're wasting a lot of money.
Yeah,
and
a lot of overhead.
You're losing a lot of money. But if you, like, for instance, obviously, I don't think the comic book shops will survive any kind of shutdown that's about to happen. Yet, hopefully the bookstores, we really, really need the bookstores to be there. Because if you can get your graphic novel into a bookstore and say they order 10 copies and it stays there, and then 4 months later they'll order 10 copies. You know what?
No, the bookstores are all a vanity at this point.
But your shelf life is longer than it'll ever be in a comic book store.
Yeah.
Put out a comic that's a floppy, you have a week, and then you're moved.
Oh, but there's so many problems with bookstores, though.
There may be, but I'm not. But I'm just saying, I think floppies are absolutely, completely dead.
Yeah, when you say floppies, just to clear, like, so people in the chat, we're talking about monthly periodicals. We're talking, we're talking about ongoing like storylines over months of time.
Yeah,
and then what Todd is talking about, like the European, is like their graphic novels. They're one and dones. They're like self-contained stories. And I think
chapters,
finding out with ComicsGate and what we're doing, which is the independent crowdfund, is that the one and dones are probably going to do better. Like you can do, like I can do a Chrono Mechanics one and done, and then I can revisit that world and do another story that is self-contained one and done, and so on and so forth. But to try to serialize things is like cliffhanger endings, follow it up, things like that. I'm going to say this to everybody. Do we all agree on this? Is this kind of like, is that part of it dead? Like as far as just monthly floppies?
I think you're starting to see it phase out. And I think if you look at what DC seems to have, basically what I see happening with DC is the flood to shelf marketing scheme that they've had for the last like 15 years that's gone away. There's no way it's sustainable. It just isn't. I think what you're going to see is you're going to see them. They need to keep those core titles alive because what they're doing is, if you look at this thing with what they're doing right now, I can't remember the name of the promotion they're doing, the future thing. They're doing like Future a 2-shot. Yeah, Future State. They're doing a 2-shot, and then that's it. But I think what's going to happen is
you're not realizing something, Bob. Those aren't.
Well, I'm not done talking yet.
Those aren't 22 pagers. Have you looked at them?
I know.
They're going to have 4 or 5 creative teams all doing a contained story.
Okay, I'm gonna take you into Mordor. I'm gonna bring you right back to the Shire. Okay, give me a second.
Let me just take a moment since we're interrupting Bob. Welcome to the show, Pixel Trader. I think it's the first time you and I have been live on a show. So welcome. We're gonna let Bob finish his thought, and then
real quick. Later, everybody. Peace out. Have a fun time.
All right.
Bye.
Take it easy, Zach. Good luck, man.
I actually got to dip out too.
All right, Nasser. Take care, brother. Thanks for coming in.
See you guys.
Take care, Nasser.
See you, Nasser.
But what I was saying is that I think what they're doing is they are literally going to use those core titles, those main titles, Batman, Superman, Justice League. They're going to keep those alive, but they're going to keep those alive to farm IPs. And then any books that they do are going to be like what they're doing with Future State. They're going to be these self-contained, like 45, 50-page books that are going to satellite off of those main titles. Those main titles, I think they have to keep those going to keep those properties alive. But everything else that they do going forward, I think, is what they're eventually going to do. Is they're going to do stuff like that, where they're just going to have those like a European model. I think they're starting to transition to that.
You're already starting to see the 22 pagers gone.
Yeah,
you're already seeing it.
Yeah, and I think
they've done a bunch of things already that have been 60 pages long.
Yeah, or even with like the limited series stuff, like the Black stuff. The Black Label stuff. So I mean, I think Todd's right. I think what they're going to do is they're going to transition to that model, and that's what they're going to do going forward. But I also think that they're going to be looking really heavily into some form of disposable medium, and digital is the disposable medium of the day.
Exactly. So Pixel is like, it's get me in here. So I want to find what Pixel has to say about all this stuff. So once again, welcome, and you got the floor, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. Everybody has made pretty good points here, but I think the biggest kind of what's that? I was gonna say
I had to do it, man.
No, I didn't hear you. Sorry.
You said everybody made excellent points. I said except for Nasser.
Oh, okay.
Kick Nasser.
I think the elephant in the room though is the global shift of the way that people consume their media. Mm-hmm. We've seen it through all kinds of stuff. I mean, you see the movie industry is taking a massive hit right now because people aren't going, well, aside from just COVID in general, but on demand, live streaming, all that stuff has started to become one of those things where people are way more apt to spend on a subscription versus paying for one shots. So like Netflix, for instance, you've got access to that whole library. Apple Music, Google Music, all that kind of stuff. You're seeing that subscription model becoming way, way bigger. And that's why I brought up Shonen Jump and Viz in general, is you've got all these series that are continuing to be built and run and stuff, and they are sequential. So you're not really just doing a contained story. They're releasing X number of pages per week or per month, depending on the schedule, but it's subscription, and people are able to bounce around between different books and read whatever they want through that. Yeah. The current model here in the States, because it's such an institution, it has so much infrastructure behind it, so much history behind it, it has been a lot slower for it to change. But I think, you look at how these companies are going down right now. I gotta think they're gonna have to adapt to something like that if they're going to survive in any type of major but like we said before, Shonen Jump, I mean, they release this stuff. on a monthly, weekly basis, depending on which it is. Like I'm reading one right now called Chainsaw Man. They give you the first couple of chapters for free. Each one of those chapters is about 20 pages. They give you the last 3 chapters for free. So you can read the entire thing for free if you check it out weekly. But if you want to get the whole thing or catch up on it, you have to pay that subscription, which is like $3 a month. And you have access to a huge amount of content.
Well, that's exactly where I was going to go with everything. But speak of the devil, Stefani Rene is hello. Hey, if you missed the beginning of the show, we plugged your book, Thomas Moira, Wizard for Hire. So we did a big old plug. And also, Joe was saying that you speak perfect English. So you and I have got to do a hacks chat soon and put a spotlight on your new book, my friend. So once again, everybody go check out Stefani Rene's new book. It looks pretty amazing. So yeah, Pixel, I was, it's like one thing we do on Pontificators is we throw all the problems out there, and then we start, trying to come up with solutions or where inevitably it will go. And Joe and I talk a lot. We may be working on something for the future together. And so we were just talking and had this realization, like, if print medium is dead, if it is indeed dead, then what is going to take its place? And for me, the only thing that's the logical successor is a computer.
Digital.
Is digital. Yeah, exactly. Because there's nothing else that makes any sense. And for me, I always had a problem with trying to sell things on the computer because there's always been that part where people just don't want to pay for things. They can pirate it, they can go around it, they can do all these things. And so I think there's still a stigma about, like monetizing this stuff where people still kind of have that chambered in the back of their head. So is that even changing? Are people changing more to, like, if there was a subscription-based comic book, would we have to change the hearts and minds of the consumer on the computer, or would that work? And if so, how would we do it? Would it be like a publishing company, like Marvel or DC, that would have, or like even Alterna, where they have a library of books and then they just make them all available with a subscription, type of thing? Or would it be like individuals like, myself or, Florida Man, just putting books up and just making them available, like a Hack Shack download, like site where you could get Chrono Mechanics or Black and White projects or, whatever else that I'm doing at that time. I mean, where do you guys think that this is headed?
Yeah, well, I think that, as Pixel was saying, the Shonen Jump model has already proven to be wildly successful. And one of my long-term publishing goals is to build up enough of a library that eventually my publishing company could offer a subscription service and do something where because in business, there's this term called barrier to entry. And basically what it means, for anyone not familiar with the term, is that if your cost is too high, then people are going to say, well, I can't afford that. So whatever initial interest they might have had is gone because they think that, they're not going to be able to buy into it. But the thing with an app like Shonen Jump is that the barrier to entry, the monthly cost, is so low that virtually anybody can afford it. And there's this interesting sociological study that was done. I can't remember the year, but basically it was all about piracy and the psychology behind people who buy pirated stuff versus those who don't, versus those who buy stuff legitimately and buy pirated stuff. And one of the things that was found, and I think there was even a marketing agency that made use of this data and convinced some big company not to even worry about piracy because the price for their product was so low that what the study found is that if you price it low enough, even people who will often buy pirated material, if it's low enough, they'll just go ahead and pay for it. Because what the study found is that most of the people who buy pirated stuff, it's not that they get a kick out of doing something that's illegal. It's that they don't think they can afford whatever the legitimate sale price was for the item. Doesn't even matter what the item was.
Right. It's like Photoshop for me. Like Photoshop is outrageously expensive. You know what I mean? And if I get a pirated version, so be it. You know what I mean? I'm not saying I do have a pirated version.
Of course not.
You know, hypothetically speaking. But you know what I mean? Like I do agree with you on some level that, we're losing Joe. Joe's down. Oh shit. But yeah, if indeed oh no, Joe's not stopping. Are you okay?
For some reason, I tried to inhale that water and it didn't work out so well. Not
They
sure
got
what
him.
happened there.
I thought the whiskey got you.
Yeah, but
No, the whiskey actually went down a lot smoother than the water.
The water.
I miss
We're in
whiskey.
California, so it's all polluted anyways.
You get your minerals and your vegetables along with your
Yeah.
H2O.
yeah.
Your carcinogens.
But I think there will always be, like, I think we'll still keep getting like the collected versions and the omnibuses and things like that. And I think that we'll start seeing more of the digest versions like we see with like Shonen Jump, where it's a bunch of single issues, but it's single issues, like 18, 20 page books, but there's like 8 of them in one collection. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then I also think that is going to be supplementary to the digital, though, to the programs like they have with Shonen Jump. And Shonen Jump, like that program caught a lot of attention from the comic book industry, because that like Pixel said, that thing took off like a rocket.
Yeah, definitely. And it also shows that there's a desire, or I guess see a need, fill a need for like alternative comic book stories. You know what I mean? Like that aren't necessarily coming from Marvel and DC. And this is also very healthy for the industry, where we can, you know, do different subject matter, and like all the Comicsgate books are really, you know, vast in as far as subject matter, things like that. So if we can market this stuff right, we can start getting these books into different people's hands. You know what I mean? Like somebody that might not like tights and capes might like, you know, a Florida Man, you know, adventure,
Slice of life, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the key. The key is always marketing. So, you know, even if there was like a hub that was supplying, you know, different IPs, you know, comic, like downloadable IPs, it still has to be marketed in such a way that could attract, you know, somebody that might not be a mainstream superhero fan, but might, you know, like you said, Bob, a Spice of Life, you know, Florida Man adventure, you know, so.
And that also would allow them to not have to shove stories like that into the superhero genre where that doesn't really fit.
Exactly.
You know, which has been a big complaint for a lot of people.
Well, we've talked about on Pontificators. I think like the Marvel universe made sense to have it as a universe, but the DC universe, it always felt like they were shoehorning things in. Like there were characters that should not, you know, be in other characters' universes. Shazam is one of them that comes to mind. And even a character like Batman, I don't want to go off on like a superhero tangent, but even Batman, I don't think really belongs in a Justice League story, because it just points out how he doesn't really fit in with like superpowered characters. Like if they're out in space and they're fighting, you know, like this major force, you got this guy that if he just got whacked by any of those characters, he would be dead.
It's the Iron Man thing, man. It's like outside of the suit of iron, the Iron Man suit, he's just a really super smart guy.
But he has an Iron Man suit. Batman doesn't have an Iron Man
But
suit.
Batman, Batman would be a character that I would argue that point with, because he's gotten so ridiculously he's so ridiculously overpowered now that he's like basically transcended his humanity. You know, it's like, but for most characters, like Daredevil's got no business going out in space and fighting, like, you know.
I don't think Batman does either, for the same exact reason. Like, yeah, I know that they have changed Batman so he could be in those situations.
Yeah, they turn him into the Bat God.
Yeah, but still, realistically speaking, I think you have to change the character fundamentally, or you have to write situations that only apply to that character. It's just like trying to bring Hawkeye into an Avengers story, like especially in the film where they had to, or Black Widow, they have to write specific things for them to, because they can't be on the front line. You know what I mean? So you have to write a character like that in a very specific way. But with Black Widow or Hawkeye, I don't mind them doing that. But with Batman, I don't like when they do that, because Batman is like, he's.
You know why they did that though? It's because he's the most popular character they have. So like, we got to put him in this.
Right. So, well, yeah, financially it makes sense, but as far as like story, I would. It actually worked.
I would prefer him to be a street level guy. I've always liked him better that way.
I like Batman in his own world. Mostly, I like when there's the Batman, the Bat family characters and stuff like that. But I like him in his own world. I like Shazam in his own world because I think that
the magical thing,
right? By bringing him into the DC universe, it points out all the things you can't do with that are innate in the character and the concept that you really can't do in a real world DC universe. One of them is he's a freaking kid. So once all those Justice League guys know that he's a kid, you would have to treat him so differently than you would treat any other character, because he's a boy. You know, it's weird.
The cool thing about, like, and for a while Batman kind of was like, you know, like he would show up in Justice League every once in a while, but he was kind of in his own thing and everything. And I always liked the storyline reason for why they did that. Why that was always like, why does Superman just fly in and fix everything in Gotham?
Right.
And it's because he's not allowed. It's like the Green Lanterns aren't allowed to come into Gotham until they get Batman's permission.
Yeah.
like that's actually a thing in the comics, which is hilarious.
Well, for me, I always thought like the Brave and Bold, the initial Justice League of America characters, that team works. You know, you have Martian Manhunter, you have the Flash, you have Aquaman, you have
Green Arrow,
Green Lantern. I mean, even before Green Arrow, but you have Green Lantern, so that was the core group. Yeah, and then later it was like Hawkman, the Atom, and then like you said, Green Arrow, and then that still made sense. But as soon as you bring in, you know, the powerhouses like Superman, then what is Martian Manhunter compared? You know, what is Wonder Woman compared? You have like repetitive kind of power bases
and sets. And
it's weird, but like
that's what they were originally meant to be. It was the Justice League was supposed to be the other guys,
right? You
know, you had your Trinity, and then you have the other guys.
And by having those specific skill sets or power abilities, then they can all shine within the group. But when you have the other characters, it then becomes artificial and weird the way you have to write it. So, anyways, that's a major aside. And I love to geek out with you guys.
Tangent.
Yeah, exactly. But as far as you know, the digital and the print medium dying, how do we feel about just that? I mean, can we agree? Like, do we think that the print medium is dying? Are periodicals going to go the way of the dodo, or is this? Okay, so
periodicals are definitely going to go the way of the dodo, because it's just not a cost-effective medium.
And periodicals, not just
and they don't
newspapers, stuff like that as well, magazines, monthly magazines, or just are we talking about comics?
No, well, monthly magazines have been dying.
Monthly magazines have been pretty much dead for a long time. Most of it's digital now, anyway.
The problem isn't that, you know, they're just going to die like that. It's the problem is systemic, sort of in the managerial, is like they can't think outside the box. They can't think like, okay, we could put all the Superman line into a 100-pager, all the Batman line into a you know, like you're giving out, like you're talking about phone books, like something that's cheap and throwawayable, and then you prestige it in some other format, the things that worked, the things that people weren't like, oh, that was awesome, I'd like to see it put together in some nice format. They don't want to think like that.
Yeah.
You know, they don't realize, they look at their industry and they go, how do we save it? And you can't. We thought we could talk about some ideas of how to save it, but we can't, because what happened? Well, unfortunately, we had this pandemic, and then what it did is killed the one place where this was sustainable, and that's the distribution and comic book stores. Without them, it can't. You can't. Got to go outside the box.
Go ahead.
You got to start shipping right to the people who want it. You got to start giving them something for their value, for their money, for the price of that shipping.
And also, what's the incentive for a store outside of a comic book shop to carry periodicals?
Right. There's no
incentive for them at all. The only incentive you can put is like it's returnable. So, but it still takes up a lot of space. You know, like if Walmart, you know, like how much space are they going to give the DC universe or the Marvel universe or these types of books?
I've walked into Marvel looking for that the Red Rooster thing, and I can't find them anywhere. They say they have them, but I guarantee you what they're doing is they're putting those books on the shelves and then they're just chucking it.
They're returnable. You can kind of, and I'm not trying to cast shade because I think what they're doing is noteworthy. It really is, you know, Mitch and his guys. But it's if Marvel and DC can't do it with the recognition,
they're not going to be able to
know how new IPs can do it. And I think that you can kind of
they were at an unfair advantage,
right? And then you can kind of
treat them the same. Like, okay, this will be located here, no matter what store you go to. It was
just whatever corner they could shove it into.
And no employee that you went to, like I even showed them, hey, you see this display, this red, you know, and it looks like it hangs on the. Where can I find it? I've never seen it. I don't think we have that here.
Yeah.
No idea. So it's it's a great idea, but too big of a place unless they're willing to do something like this. We have a comic book shop corner.
Yeah.
We're going to dedicate this space to graphic novels and comic books and this and that and other related material. We're going to do that. And we'll just call it the comic book fun zone. Because you can't be Marvel, you can't be DC, you got to be all in.
Well, the thing is, like you can convince maybe a buyer of these chains one time, but it's going to either make or break in a very short period of time. Like they're going to know whether this is working or not. And I know what they're doing is they're creating their own space outside of the rest of the space. You know what I mean? So they're creating their own place to buy the book. So they're not asking Walmart or whatever to take something away and then put their book in, which is very, very smart. It's a way of selling the idea. But inevitably, it becomes like you either have to deliver or not. And then it becomes like, if there is a fan, let's say there's a fan that goes in there and buys, is it Bass Reeves? They get their Bass Reeves book, and then they're like, they keep coming back, and it's the same Bass Reeves, or it's just an empty space. Then, you know, they might be intrigued to buy the other ones just because they're not getting their next Bass Reeves. But after a while, if you don't keep the cycle going, then there's going to be people that are just going to just forget about it. And just one other note that I wanted to say is, like, if you go into Walmart, you go to Target, you go to these places, you'll see over the last couple of years that their Blu-ray, their DVD, their music, even their book sections, these things are getting smaller and smaller and
almost non-existent.
Yeah, as the months go. So if you can't even sell music or you can't sell movies, how the hell are you going to sell a comic book? You know what I mean? Unless you bring the price down like way, way low, like we were talking with digital, but then it doesn't make any sense because you're going to be losing some serious cash.
Yeah. The other thing too is, and this is an element that I don't think a lot of people really wrap their minds around, is the idea of reading something periodically has begun to phase out so drastically. Everybody wants to binge everything. They want the whole story right there, all of it together, so they can consume it all at once. And you can't do that with periodicals. You just can't. So you have to go into some kind of a graphic novel, like into a collected format. That's the only way. That's like I said, it's about convenience. Everything is convenience. So if they can get the whole story.
Right. And it makes more sense for a Walmart or a Target to carry something like that, because one, it could be $12 to $15. So they're going to get more for that space that they give. You know, like if you're going to make 50 cents off of the same space, but then you can make I don't know, $5, then you're going to put that item in there that's going to make you $5 for the same amount of space, shelf space that you've given it. And so that's how they think, and rightly so. But are we all in agreement pretty much that like Mr. Dong said, that it's gonna, and what Bob was saying, it's gonna be Mr. Dong's. It's gonna come down to these graphic novel formats like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And then, but I do
and I
think
love that. You know what? I recently bought the one thing I've bought in the last 6 months was the Curse of the White Knight.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted that. I want that on my shelf.
Yeah.
You know what I want to do? What I want to do is I want to fully embrace the European layout too, where it's the magazine size. I for some reason, like, comics are cool, but they're cool more like a kid-like thing where they're portable. They kind of roll up easy and they don't take up a lot of space. But if you're going to get into more of a graphic novel or a substantial story, I think those formats make a lot more sense. And man, I dig those they're more widescreen. So you can actually also kind of mirror like movies better and the widescreen formats than you can with a comic book format, because the comic book format is tall. And so all your layouts kind of have to be more vertical. But with those more graphic novel, like the European, like more magazine size, you can start kind of, getting into the horizontal layouts. And so you're not always forced to go vertical. You can still do that. But one thing you can't really do with a comic book effectively is go horizontal, because it kind of dictates, even the covers like dictate that same format. And to be honest, I've been doing that, using that format for 35 years, and I'm tired of it. Like, just as far as like variety, I would love to start laying out stuff like that. And I know Humberto Ramos and Paul Jenkins, they did that Fairy Tales. What's
Fairy Tales? Yeah.
Yeah. And Humberto's fully embracing that European format, and it's absolutely amazing because you're seeing comic books, but in a different way. So it almost seems like, it's brand new, because you're seeing, different layouts, more panels per page, and different layout shapes, per panel. And I really like that. As a creative person, it excites me to do something, different. It sounds like you're the same, Todd. Yeah.
Oh, I've been preaching the European comics and studied them.
In the chat, Pablo. Oh, sorry, Todd. You skipped out for a minute. I thought you were done. Please continue, sir.
Just the idea of that, it's something for your shelf. It has a hardcover. Just that alone sells me on the format, because, I'm not in the game. I don't think you could teach a kid or get kids to be in the game of put it in the bag, put it in the box, that's the other part of this that causes it to be done. The how much space it takes up. I used to have 28 long boxes. I moved them 5 or 6 times in my life. It was ridiculous. I have very few moments where I go, oh, I miss them. I want to go look through something or whatever, but there's places where I can look at it, all of it.
Todd, my ultimate dream is to have the one room in a house, and it's just my comic book library, and where they're not in long boxes, they're actually like, I could just pull it out, like, here's my Justice League shelf. You know what I mean? But the Justice League shelf would be like freaking the whole length of the wall. That would be one collection, you know what I mean? And then just kind of keep going down, and then have a nice comfortable, like couch or lazy boy, where I could just like grab my book, turn on my lamp, and just like read my comic book, like a decadent ass. Well,
the format that you guys were talking about, Pablo Romero Art in the chat, he's had the name for it. It's called Bande Dessinée.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Where it was a Franco-Belgian term, and they're the ones that started publishing in that format. Today we call it the European format. And I agree with you, Art. As far as trying to make, or I shouldn't say make, trying to present stories in more of a cinematic format, that bande dessinée or European format is fantastic.
Yeah. And
The other
Concept
thing,
Comics. Let me read this first, Bob.
yeah, go ahead.
The European model works, but the problem is more to do with a cultural shift regarding what people consume, when, and why. And yes, definitely, there. Even with the digital, there's going to have to be a re-educational,
It's that convenience thing. It's like I said.
moment. Yeah, and but at this point, like we've pointed out, what do we have to lose? You know what I mean? Like, let's just throw everything on the frickin' table, because at this point, what does it matter? Like, if we're all in agreement that, periodicals, monthly floppies it's a thing of the past. None of us even hesitated with it. Then that's got to be other people's thoughts as well. So if it indeed is dead, and then sadly, comic book shops are like struggling, and that's not really a viable outlet. That's mostly floppies as well. And we've pontificated that comic book shops, what we should do with comic book shops is we should placate a collectible mindset. Those places, they are specialty shops already, but we should customize, like what we're doing with Comicsgate, like one-of-a-kind comic books, and then make those and put those in those shops to where you can't go get those at Walmart, you can't download those, you can't do anything, but you can only get them there. And so, you can kind of have a high-end collectible place for comic book collectors, and then you can have your more general place where you can download comics or you can do other things, and it could be more entry level. And then, once the kids hook, like we all got hooked, then they go, oh, there's comic book shops, there's these high-end like comic books that exist, I want to see what that's all about,
for sure,
like that. And so I do think that that's kind of where it ends up. It's going to end up having to go if we're going to try to figure out how to make it all work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I've had it's been both good and bad, where I decided in 2018 I was going to get into the publishing game and did a ton of research on the indie scene. And then I had to take 2 extended breaks from those plans for reasons beyond my control. Life happens, as they say. But the benefit to that was I got to see a lot of other people try different things. And it also allowed me some more time for planning, where I've got now kind of a multi-layered approach that I'm going to be trying, where I definitely have plans to do the larger size, 48-page plus book through the crowdfunding market. But then also I'm structuring the stories so that they can easily be split into single issue floppies that can go on newsprint for those customers. But then also I'm also structuring things so that there can be a large omnibus size hardback, version for that if it ever, if things are successful and things can go that far. And also looking at what are digital formats and delivery systems, what are the logistics there. So I'm trying to, in a sense, have a finger in every pie, but it's a stepped approach. It's like, this has to be successful to a certain point, and then I can try that. And if that's successful to a certain point, I can try that. So I'm not trying to get into too many things all at once, but it's more like an if-then type of approach where success allows for something else to be tried.
That's why I thought it was ballsy what Nasser did, with the PDFs, where he just did the campaign that was just selling the PDFs. And on some level, and maybe it's just because I've done this for so long, and I know people are so passionate about the floppies, about their comic books, and I am too. But there is one thing that I am looking forward to, and it is possibly digital, because we've talked on Pontificators where you also have things that you can do that you can't do in comics. You can cross-reference things with a click. Like, you know how like old comic books, you know, there would be editorial notes and it's like, see Spider-Man 413 or whatever. And you didn't have Spider-Man 413. So you had to go to the comic shop. You had to go through the back issues. And you were lucky if you could find it or not. And then you had to come back and read it. So there was anticipation. There was all that kind of stuff going on. But with this day and age, people aren't like that. They're used to getting things like that. So if you could just click on that little editor note and go, you know, and read that, or it could even be just, you know, like this character, like you introduce a character. So instead of old school having to explain the whole backstory of that character, they could click on a footnote and boom, go over there, read a paragraph real quick, come back to the story, and they have everything they need. And I think that for me, that stuff is where it's at. And then, like Bob mentioned, I wish I could remember that guy's name. Maybe Todd does. We had him on Pontificators. He had that great app that has the animation and it moved. I think that is really cool. But I do think if we go that way, we are really veering from the comic book,
the traditional comic style.
It
has to be whatever you make for that app, that app and that design has to be made in that style.
Right. Otherwise, we're kind of transitioning into something completely, well, not necessarily completely different, but it is different. So, but I'm kind of, at this point, I'm open to all of it. I know a lot of creators aren't. They want, you know, everything to kind of stay with the printed and stuff like that. But for me, the digital is intriguing. I see it as being able to hit a bigger market with very little effort, and I think you can bring the price point down. And then as a creator, you don't have to warehouse things, you don't have to deal with printers, you don't have to deal with a lot of those aspects, and it just seems to make a lot more sense that way. But like we've also agreed on this show, and I think we're in agreement, is that the graphic novel format is probably where the traditional, like panel to panel sequential kind of thing is going to survive, and probably in more of a Comicsgate kind of like high end way versus, you know, like just a floppy or just a monthly kind of, you know, one and done. Well, not one and done, but just read it and then move on to the next.
The periodical,
more compiled, more substantial page count, 60 pages, more or you know, that type of thing.
Well, I think there's two versions of that. I think there's going to be the premium format like you're talking about. Okay. I also think that there's going to be like the omnibus / digest format like we were talking about, where it's like it's cheap printed medium, you know, but it's a collection, because it, like I said, like I keep harping on this because it's 100% fact. It's all about convenience and accessibility, and people want to binge stuff. They want as much as they can possibly get for their buck.
Well, Archie's been doing that forever.
Yeah, exactly.
Digest books and stuff like that.
And it kept them alive.
Yeah, and I would say that for Marvel, DC, anybody that has a crazy 50, 60, 70 year inventory, hell yeah, man.
Oh, like, they could put out ridiculous
ones. I would be doing that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
You know? Like, there would be no hesitation at all. For people like us, you know, we're still creating the history. We're still trying to, you know, create a catalog of you know, IPs. Yeah. So it's a little bit harder for us, unless we were to go with, you know, a site that already has other books that we could just kind of put our book in there with the rest of those books.
Or like if everybody got together with like Peter Simeti and he just printed out like a Comicsgate digest with like something like that.
That's the approach that I'm gonna take. Is going now. I've told several people that as far as I'm concerned, Alterna has right of first refusal when it comes to printing my comics on newsprint. I love Alterna. I think Pete's fantastic. If for some reason, you know, if for some reason he decides,
represent.
If for some reason Pete decides that, you know, he doesn't want to publish my superhero books under the Alterna logo, then I'm just going to use the print partnership program, and I'm going to treat even though they're made, with love for the comic readers like myself who grew up on newsprint, who still read newsprint, who want comics on newsprint. They are being made for those people, but they're also going to be printed and distributed as marketing material, essentially disposable, very inexpensive entertainment. And I'm going to be trying to distribute them as widely as possible with the hopes that it will, even if people aren't interested in a newsprint product, I'm going to have in there where they can find the premium format stuff. And so I'm hoping that if nothing else, even if I have to treat it as a marketing expense on my balance sheet, if that's all it is, I'm okay with that. If it's getting more eyes onto my stuff and then they're buying in other formats, I'm fine with it.
I always say like that's what Marvel DC should do, but what they also have to be is realistic about it, because it's going to be slow, and that they need to be in for the long haul.
Yep.
They have to
burn hot. Like even New 52, we're going digital. They were hot on that for about 6 months, and then it didn't pay off quick enough for them, and then just cut it. So that's what comic books does. What they do as well is they kind of they have ideas, they go into it, but I don't know which one of you guys said we have to re-educate. There has to be a re-education.
That's the thing, and that's what they don't want to commit to, is reconditioning the audience.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Which takes years.
Look, that's not even something that's possible. You say that, but
to an extent it is, though.
The reason why someone keeps bringing up Japan and this and that, look, you can never change the perception that comic books are for kids, even though it's been a long time since they really were. And you still have that perception. The comic books have this stigma. They're not seen like they are seen in Japan.
Vertigo went out and they got the college market. They got the older kids. I think Vertigo was one of the bigger successes, which makes me sad that they're not around anymore. But at the time, I don't know where they inevitably were at before they got canceled, but that line was actually doing exactly what it was. What
they needed to do.
There. Right. They did it, they executed, and they grew the market. And most of those people that were reading Vertigo books, they were not reading the DC Universe stuff. They were buying Vertigo books. That's pretty much it.
Okay. You can't recondition the audience as far as what they like to read, but you can. But I do think that it's possible to recondition them as far as the format that they use it, that they consume it in.
You can. That's
what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about reconditioning their taste.
Radio to TV to film, to DVD.
Right.
All these different things have been conditioning people how to get their medium and how to get their stories.
Right.
So you can do that. I don't know if we can do that. The four of us.
No. Well, I'm talking when I say I'm talking about the industry as a whole. I'm talking about DC, Marvel.
Smart-ass.
Yeah, no, but I just just to clarify. But as far as like you said, now it's actually it's kind of the other way around now. It's almost like the industry has to recondition itself to meet the criteria for the new audience. So they have to go to some kind of a digital format. They have to change. They have to leave the periodicals behind. You know what I mean?
2 words.
Mike's seen the show before.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, Mike, it's no fun without Chester.
I don't know, man. I still think it's pretty awesome.
It's gonna be your legacy, Bob.
Yeah. Chester's he's gonna hunt me down one of these days. He's like, I remember all those freaking streams.
They're like scar tissue for him, yeah.
One thing that seems to be lost, right? You go back 10, 12 years, and even though I had slowed down collecting, there was this word of mouth that always came to me through friends or through other avenues that said, "Oh my God, guess what? You gotta go check this out. You got to. It's so well written. It's so good." And that it just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. It doesn't even happen in social media. And I try to tell people, go read Seven to Eternity, or go read to go.
Oh my God! It made it that much worse that you had to scroll down. For some reason, it became even dirtier that you had to scroll above. This is for you, brother Chester.
I win.
I win, Chester.
Put aside the whole European market, the things that I've been kind of talking about, but books like Once and Future, great book, fun, it's well drawn, well colored, well written. But I'm the only one doing that. I go out there and I try to do that. It's just not being done anymore. Word of mouth. Word of mouth used to make me walk back into the comic book store because I hated going there. The guy was a jerk. He's still there. I lost one of my better comic book stores. But word of mouth like someone would tell me, "Oh my God, Neil Adams has drawn this new book, Odyssey. You got to go back and get it." And I would. Things like that made me go back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the modern collector or the kids that are buying comics. I don't really know the mindset. I don't know if there even is that kind of chain where people are turning each other onto comics. I'd like to think it still exists, but it seems like it mainly exists from like parent to kid. You know what I mean? Like the parent, I love comic books, and you should too.
I think Central Scrutinizer just hit on it. For word of mouth to work, you actually have to talk to people. We don't know seriously. What is like, especially like the 14 to 30 age group? What's their main form of communication? Social media and this. And you're not gonna get that kind of just like that passerby comment from that. So I think that's a big part of why word of mouth just is dead.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, because my daughter communicates about Animal Crossing with her friends through.
Right, but it's something that they all love already. It's like one of them finds something new. How often do they talk about something new though?
Well, that's also the key is you got to get this stuff. One, like we talk on the show, a lot of kids don't even know what comic books are. Like,
right.
Comic book is an uphill climb, and then get them, involved with it, and then to start like getting this network going where they tell a friend and so on and so forth. I mean, this industry, this is why I don't know. I did feel really bad when things were happening, and I'm kind of making my peace with it. And maybe it's because I've been removed from the mainstream for about 2 years now, is that I felt really bad about things that were happening. But then I started really seriously thinking about it. It's like with my peers, we've been talking about this for 25 years. You know what I mean? Like, we've already seen the cracks. Mm-hmm. All of this industry has seen the writing on the wall, the biblical writing on the wall, and have done no real course correction, no significant course correction. And even in the 90s, this is my biggest, and I had a conversation with Rob Liefeld about this. My biggest complaint about the Image years in the 90s and all that boom was nobody was really concerned with growing the industry. It became just like everything else in this industry. As soon as they figure out a niche, they just exploit it, and they exploit it to death. And then they go on to the next thing, and then they exploit that to death, and so on and so forth. But they never really pull back and think, like in the 90s, this is why I say that, is there were resources. There was financial resources. Hollywood was looking at these books. Anytime you start selling 1 million copies of something, Hollywood, trust me, money people start looking at what you're doing. And so they had all of those things. Todd did the right thing. Todd made toys. He expanded the market. He got the comic IP into Toys R Us. He got these comic book IPs in the form of toys into different medium, and was very, very successful at it. But not a lot of people were thinking outside of the box. Most of them were thinking like, let's do specialty covers. Let's do multiple covers. Right. Let's do gimmicks. Let's do things like that. But not a lot of them were thinking, how do we get the books here? How do we do this? How do we, maybe grow the market? And it's the weirdest thing is like Image Comics hired a guy who he did like those ice capades, like tours and stuff like that. He was like a manager and a business guy. And so they hired that guy. He had an office at Image. He had his own office. I went out to lunch. I talked with him and stuff like that. And so his job was to try to figure out how to expand things into different. And so the biggest thing, believe it or not, was an Image Comics type ice capades.
Oh my God.
I'm not even kidding you guys. Like costume characters. Where do you think like Rob Liefeld's costume characters, a lot of that stuff was coming from? They were actually thinking like that they would do something like that, where they would dramatize like these comics.
Like banana splits.
Yeah, like on ice, like Image on Ice or whatever it was.
Did that giant?
They brought this dude. They brought that dude in to branch out, and he just kept pushing them back into the freaking ice capades.
I don't know if
I'm telling you guys, it's a gold mine.
it's gonna happen, man. But I don't know if it was him or like I don't know what like what instigated the idea, but they did hire a guy, but nothing came out of it.
That's in my brain now, man. It's got like Shaft and Bad Rock doing freaking triple letters in the back of my head.
I never told anybody this story.
So the Bad Rock, the giant Bad Rock costume that I've seen pictures of, that was supposed to be in an Ice Capade production.
Okay, okay, wait. I gotta back up.
Wow.
I gotta nick some stuff in the bud before like this gets out. And
Okay.
What I'm saying is
It all makes sense now, Art.
I'm being hypothetical. What I'm saying is I'm speculating that maybe these things existed.
Okay.
Like that they were going to strap, ice skates on Bad Rock and have him do a pirouette on ice while he's bopping, whatever, villain.
That's funny that you say that, because when you look at it in its totality, take Walking Dead and put that aside. Look at it in its totality. It's never had it's had great comics, best-selling comics. It's never had a great video game. It's never had a great animated show. It's never had anything crossover. It's never had anything crossover and be great.
The Spawn animated series was actually pretty good.
The HBO,
yeah, the HBO series was good, and Spawn is a pretty big deal in
Spawn's the only thing that's still going.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Other than Postal, who reads Postal?
Nobody
from Top Cow.
Who reads Savage Dragon? I'm sorry, Eric. I'm sorry, but yeah, who reads Savage Dragon?
Oh, good.
It sells about 3,000 a month.
Yeah,
to shops.
To shops.
Not to customers.
If they didn't have that thing set up the way they do, they would have been bankrupt. If it wasn't that founders 3C thing that they have, if that was what do they call it? If that was an LLC or something like that, or a corporation, they'd be bankrupt.
Yeah. I can just see Spawn saying like, "Do you want to shoot some demons?"
I think I struck a nerve with Image on Ice here.
Well, their guts out on the floor.
All right, you guys all tweet out Image on Ice. We need to get some.
Oh God. I just want to. Mighty Geek Studios said something about why manga. So this is that kids are more into manga because it allows them to escape from reality, and that made me think about something. Do you think that they have been like they keep talking about like comics are supposed to be about the world outside our window? Do you think they've injected so much of the world that out there into these comics that a lot of kids are like, man, I don't want to read this crap. This is just like living here.
Well, yeah, there should be escapism. I heard somebody on Midnight's Edge or something, and he's going to say way better than I did, that there is a certain level of escapism. And you know how, like, there's got to be hope. There's got to be, like, non-reality in essence. You want to see the good guy beat the bad guy, because in real life, it doesn't always happen that way.
Right.
So even, especially for a little kid, it's reassuring, and it gives them hope and aspire to that this is how the world should be. You know what I mean? The bad guy should pay a price for his bad. The good guy should triumph. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then things become more gray area, and then the comics industry was more placating adults versus kids, and I think that they kind of lost their way. And I do think it was because comics did grow up with Alan Moore and Frank Miller, but like we've said on the show too, it was a specific market. They weren't marketing the kids.
Yep.
They were marketing those things to older people that grew up on comic books. So then they could get like a contrast, like, oh shit, this isn't the Batman I grew up on. But a kid, if that's all they know is Batman, it's not shocking or cool or anything. It just is their Batman.
Yeah, and I think that's, and when I said that, I asked that, I was talking specifically about the superhero genre, the 4-color genre,
right?
You know, because obviously there are great stories to do, like From Hell and stuff like that. But just like specifically the superhero genre, the main core comic book industry, I was wondering if you think that maybe had an effect. But yeah, they're still talking about freaking Ice Capade shows in the freaking chat
up through the Bronze Age, you know, into the mid 80s, which is when, you know, the comic book industry decided that a couple of outliers like Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen, that the whole industry needed to go that way, as opposed to treating those like a couple of Elseworld tales.
Exactly.
You know, up until then, comics were designed, the stories were designed to be friendly for all ages. And that didn't mean that they were written for 5-year-olds. It meant that they were written for adults, but they were safe for kids to read.
Yeah.
And that's
they were morality plays.
That's how I'm treating my stories, is that I'm writing them for adults, but it's perfectly fine if your 8-year-old picks up one and reads one. They're not going to repeat anything that they read in that book that's going to give grandma a heart attack. You know, it's the kind of thing where a lot of it is going to be over their head, but then enough of it they'll be able to understand. And we were all kids reading comics, and we all liked the stuff that seemed to be written for like the ages maybe 3 or 4 years above where we were at the time. Yeah. That is still, I'm absolutely convinced that is still a winning formula if people will only apply it.
Joe, is what happened is, like, it was kind of my generation. Like, I remember reading the more traditional comic books, but then I remember being floored by Alan Moore, you know, Swamp Thing. I remember being floored by Frank Miller's Daredevil. Yeah. I remember that. And I think what happened is that inspired the next generation. But it was also a next generation that didn't quite understand why it worked and how it worked. You know what I mean? Like, and who they were selling it to. So then they just wanted to tell these edgier, more adult superhero stories. You know what I mean? But more or less in a gratuitous way versus in a more sophisticated way, because you don't have to write down to the kids. You know, they can understand some heavy duty concepts, but you don't have to make it gratuitous. Like, you don't have to have, you know, like, exaggerate the point to absurdity, you know, to where you make it bad for kids to see, you know, as far as sex or violence or whatever it is. You can still have all those pieces in your story. You just don't have to go to that extent. You don't have to put an R rating on a G or a PG story. It doesn't mean you have to change the subject matter. You just don't show it as graphically, and you'll be fine. And that's the way comics used to be done. But you don't even really get a choice that much anymore. It's all that, you know, R-rated sensibilities, or, you know, that type of edgier PG-13 type of sensibility. And I think that's the problem. And I know this for a fact. Actually, I said I think it's a problem. I know it for a fact, is because Super Sons. Yeah. When I was working on Super Sons, I got email. I got more letters than I had in the 10 years prior. And people, like, there were parents saying, I read this with my kids. My kids love this book, you know, and it's one of the few books that, you know, I can buy and I can share with my kids, and we love these adventures. And so then I was like, well, there's a market, man.
Yeah. And it got critical acclaim.
Yeah.
Just as it started to like, and then they did like a version 2 of it, but just as it started to catch steam, and this is when Jorge Jimenez was still in the book, it was getting critical acclaim.
Yeah.
It won like 1 or 2 awards.
And then Carlo and I, with Pete Tomasi, we put it over, and it still did very, very well. And then Brian Michael Bendis came in
and took a crap all over it.
Superman franchise, and
Killed it.
right off the bat, they told us in an email, the book's canceled.
Yep.
Like, I was like, what?
That book, I'll be honest with you, I've never been a big Superman fan. John made me a Superman fan. I loved that friggin' book. I loved Super Sons. And I freaking despise Damian.
Oh yeah,
Ryan.
I hated all those. I
liked him in that book.
Right, exactly. But I hate those ideas. I hate like kids of the heroes. I don't really like those ideas as a general rule. But Pete Tomasi's writing actually
great.
Be like.
Yep.
It wasn't what was it, Grant Morrison or what? It was actually Pete Tomasi that made me like Damian. Pure and simple, you know. It was. And that's the stuff, like, you know, DC has writers that can do that stuff. They just don't allow them to do it. And then when something is doing well, they'll nix it. Jim Valentino told me something. This was like when I first broke into the comics and I was working with him in the studio. He told me, he said, DC Comics, this is 36 years ago. He said, will always shoot itself in the foot. He said they'll build up ahead of steam. They might even change the industry. You know what I mean? Like they'll do cutting edge stuff. They do not know how to sustain success. They don't know how. And if you look at their track record, all the way back to like even the newest, like New 52. New 52, that first 6-8 months, a year, they were dominating. You know what I mean? They were dominating the top 10, and then they couldn't sustain it. You know? Yeah.
I think part of it is that when they get something really good going, they give some of those creators too much freedom, and they lose control of what's going on, or the guy that's in charge suddenly just gets this idea that every nugget that comes in their head is gold.
Bob, we should do a Pontificators where we
combination.
We do a common effect. Like we go, okay, this is where DC started booming, and this is what happened.
Yeah. Like you can look at
like what happened. You know?
Like a good example would be Tom King's run on Batman. The first 20-25 issues of that run are really good. And then he got a big head about himself. He had a little bit of a falling out with his editor. He fired the editor who could get his best work out of him, and they brought in a guy that was just a rubber stamp and let him do whatever he wanted.
Yep.
And then the book just nosedived.
And I think that probably the biggest and probably most conclusive example in my mind was the whole Rebirth effort, because they had an initial massive success with the New 52. And Dan DiDio has now gone on public record, so I don't mind calling him out specifically on this. He has said himself that, and he did take responsibility for it, that they just let it get away from them, and there was not the same editorial oversight in the kind of the middle to the end of it that there was at the beginning. So that's why in the beginning it was all fairly tightly by today's standards. Everything was integrated with each other, but then it just kind of lost its way and just kind of turned into a mess. So then with the Rebirth effort, they wiped the slate clean yet again, and then they relaunched everything yet again. But it was done in a way that both critics and customers responded to really well, and sales shot up across multiple titles. And if they had continued that way, I think it would have been incredibly successful for at least 5 to 7 years. However, Dan DiDio also is on record as saying this. By his philosophy, that kind of reset everything so that all the customers were happy. And then in his words, then we get to play with all the characters again.
Yeah.
Well, okay, Dan, I understand you like to do that yourself personally, but when all the, so many customers are telling you they really like what you did and you should keep doing it, how about you listen to them and try giving them what they want instead of messing it all up again because you think that that's fun.
All those ideas are problematic in inception, and that's what this industry has to realize too. One, the industry has this conceit, and it's that well, one was kids don't read comics, which is not true, but it's that years and years of continuity is daunting for the reader. I never found it daunting. When I came in comics, it already had decades and decades and decades of books. I found it fascinating that there was a history, and if a comic book shop was done right, I could go buy any back issue I wanted. So even if the monthlies, I got all the monthlies I wanted, I could go back and I could get back issues, and I could read my heart's desire. So I don't sign off on that. I never did.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous to say.
That's a crutch. I think that was an excuse that they would use for not really knowing not knowing the subject matter.
Right, but then it leads to the next is a business decision that we need to reboot. Every so often we need to reboot because a new generation comes in. Well, like I said, I mean, there were generational stuff. Like let's say it was the 70s and there was a 60s Batman comic that I liked. As a kid, I knew it was from the 60s. I knew this was a different Batman than the one I was reading, the Neil Adams Batman. I knew it. I could see it. But you know what? I still wanted to read it. I still wanted to see what this Batman was all about. And I never, ever went, oh my gosh, how does this relate to this Batman? I always knew this was from the 60s. Like I always, even as a kid, I was like, this is not the same Batman. This was written and drawn by different people from a different decade. I never ever went, how does this relate to this contemporary story? I just think that is a conceit that this industry has. And maybe there are some people that get caught up on it, but I don't think as a basic rule, it was ever a problem. And so then New 52, well, not New 52. When was it? The DC Universe stuff. Was it called New 52? The original one.
Crisis of Infinite Earths?
Crisis. Thank you. Crisis.
In 84.
Yeah. So the original Crisis all came out of that somebody thought, all right, it's too daunting for young people to come into this universe. Right. There's all this stuff. So let's clean house and let's simplify. The reason this is also a flawed idea and it cannot ever succeed long term, and I say this with all the confidence in the world, is you inevitably create the same problem. You cannot, it's a cyclical thing. You cannot avoid it. You will still have baggage. And if that's how you think, then inevitably you're going to get yourself in the same problem that you are trying to fix. So it's a problem that you can never fix. And then I just think it's a pointless exercise. It's a short-term cash grab. And that I think DC the last couple years, 10 years or so, have just done it time and time again. And it's just it's a shameless cash grab. Oh, this isn't working, let's reboot it. This isn't working, let's reboot it. So it's never going to succeed.
And I think we see that when they're constantly writing themselves into corners, with these stories and stuff, and they're like, well, what do we do? Well, we got to do a reboot. It's like, no, take the time, figure out your subject matter, instead of, and this is a question I wanted to ask you. Do you think part of it is also that they have, because we see a lot of this happen with these writers that are doing like 4, 5, 6 books at a time, is because they're just not paying attention to what they're doing. They're not, because I'm of the mind that I don't care how good you are. If you're doing 5 or 6 projects at once, we're not going to get your best work.
There's guys that can excel in those situations, and there's guys that don't. And I would say, as a basic rule, you're right. There are very few people that can, have that many dishes spinning and not have one of them drop and crash to the floor. It just logically speaking, it's inevitable. But there are guys that can do multiple projects and do them well. I think when John Byrne, we all love John Byrne here. When John Byrne was on fire, that dude was juggling like 3 books. And I think he had a window of maybe there was a decade that was the John Byrne decade. And that guy, everything he touched was
but then again, you're talking about a guy like you're talking about a once in a generational talent like John Byrne.
Yeah, this is an exception. I'm just saying I agreed with you. I said like most of the guys cannot do that. But on the other hand, there are people like John Byrne that can pull that off.
And the thing there too was that John Byrne, much to his chagrin most of the time, had fairly tight editorial supervision. And I maintain, despite his complaints about his editors, I maintain that it was in large measure because those editors were so diligent about maintaining continuity back then. We're talking the late 70s through the 80s, like I said, and into the early 90s.
That strong editorial oversight.
Even into the early 90s, you know, after Jim Shooter was gone and you were still getting into like 91, 92, 93, there was still a concerted effort to maintain continuity and make sure that if you were, let's say if Art was on Incredible Hulk, and he wanted to borrow one of the X-Men. He wanted to borrow Wolverine for a 3-issue story arc.
It had to meet up.
Hulk. The editors got together and made sure that it was going to work out.
Yeah.
And then if everything was copacetic, then they would say to the writers and the artists, "Okay, you guys knock yourselves out. Art and his guys are going to borrow Wolverine for 3 issues. So, you know, Louise Simonson over here editing X-Men is going to make sure that that's accounted for over in the X-Men title."
Yeah. Well, I want to take a moment. Hey, Rob Hunter, what's up, man? One of my ink brethren from forever, I guess. So it's welcome. It's good to see you in the chat here, brother. Rob is an excellent inker, man. Amazing.
Yeah, and he actually brought up a really good point. He said that way we talk about the editorial thing is like how needed real editors are.
Yeah.
He said that was they were the editors used to be called, they were the gatekeepers of the characters. Like used to be like back when comics were at their heyday, like if you even drew like Captain America's boots wrong, they were like, go back and redo it.
Right.
You know, like we have to maintain this. Like that's what they used to do. Now, so many of them are just basically glorified secretaries. They just make sure that the stuff gets to the printer on time.
Yeah. At Marvel, I remember when I was working there on the Ultimate books, Marvel fired all their senior editorial staff, all of them. They only left 2. They left Brevoort and they left Ralph Macchio. And those guys then oversaw everything. Like they read all the scripts. They were the only 2 that were really functioning as real editors. And then they just had a bunch of young interns come in and work under them so that they, weren't, like the day-to-day stuff, like, are you making your deadline, stuff like that. They just had those guys, follow up phone calls, things like that. But these guys, their main responsibility was really like edit the manuscripts, like go over these stories and things like that. So right there, you can see that they were already shifting over and didn't value individual editors on these books. They just figured you could edit on high and have everything go through a central, location, and then have it all trickle down to guys that were getting paid next to nothing to do work.
And that's the other thing that somebody actually, I think it was Tara Wombat that mentioned. He said that he thought John would be a great editor, but he'd be a tear to work with. Editors aren't. That's the other thing is editors weren't your friends. They were there to do a job and get the best work out of you they possibly could. I mean, if they were genial and cordial with it, that's fine. But they had a job to do.
Oh, Mike Carlin. I always say I can say he and I are friends now, but when we were working together, I always said we have a love-hate, man, because from day to day, I mean, we went at it. I mean, there was screaming and there was yelling. And I remember one time he called me like an MF or something, like on the phone. And I was like, holy shit. And then I stopped and I said, listen, we can argue, we can have a difference of opinion, but that's overstepping the, the line there. And I said, don't talk to me that way, or, you're going to get into some trouble. And so he apologized. And then we went on arguing about whatever it was. So there was, I think as long as there's a mutual respect, you can argue. As long as there's a mutual respect, you can get things done. It only becomes a problem when you don't have that. When one guy just argues the point of view and doesn't give a crap what the other person's saying, and then just steamrolls over him because he has more clout or power than the other one. And a lot of editors understood that, and they understood egos, so they knew how to curb that, or they knew how to get around those things so they could get the best out of each one of the individual talents that they were working with.
Yep.
And I just didn't see that. Like, current editing is all on high. They're, especially DC, you ask the editor something, he will never really answer your question right then and there, being direct. He'll say, I'll have to get back to you. Sometimes it'd be an hour, sometimes it'd be a whole day, and then he'd get back to you. But in this industry, you have 30 days to do a comic book.
Yeah.
You don't have that kind of time.
Right.
You need answers at that moment, and then you move on, because that's where you're stuck. You're stuck here.
Yeah.
And if you can't get past that moment, then that has a domino effect with the writing or whatever. So you can't even really move on until you get that question answered. So not always can you move on. So then time that you lose,
So I wonder if, like, I think, like, one of the big problems is that why they have so many of them that are just basically glorified secretaries now, where they just rubber stamp whatever the creator wants. You know what I mean? To get those books out as quick as possible.
Yeah, I agree, but it's like whatever the writer wants. Like, that's the current.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is a writer's medium now. And I remember this was a few years back. I saw Marv Wolfman at a comic convention, and we were talking. It was good times, and he said that it is getting problematic, because even somebody like Marv Wolfman in this conversation was humbling himself. He goes, I write a manuscript that hopefully inspires a penciler to tell the story.
Yeah.
I'm a part of the process. I'm not really the thing that people are like, oh, they're tuning in for. They're tuning in for that artwork. So he was looking at it as like, he's just a vessel to inspire the penciler. But you don't see writers that are that way as much anymore. They're more like, I'm the show. I'm what it's all about. And I think that's also problematic in the industry. And I don't think that writers need to humble themselves to pencilers. I don't think there needs to be any of those things. But I think you have to understand where you stand in the food chain, and that you can't have too much of an overinflated sense of self as a writer, or even as an inker or colorist or any supporting. I think we all are there to service a penciler. And I know Rob is talking about pencilers having egos, and that they're I understand it, Rob, and some of those guys are complete assholes, but it really is their show. I firmly believe that it's a visual medium, and the story does come down to the visuals, and that a writer, at least the plot, is to inspire the penciler to move forward on it. And then if you put some dialogue over it, and hopefully you can create some killer characters and some great dialogue. And that's where you really shine, as far as what you see, as far as your craft, as far as you can read your craft. The other is just like, no one's ever going to really see what you wrote.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is, like, he brings it up that they've basically turned writers. These writers, they've given them a big head. They're like, they think they're celebrities.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because they're like, I'm bringing my vision to the world.
Yeah, and I
think
that came out of the Image years. I know we're getting way off.
I made Todd smile.
but we always do. Yeah, but what I think happened is, like, Image Comics was an exercise in, like, the independent spirit, and that artists could, like, it was like, we're the shit. Like,
but those guys could deliver. That's the difference.
Oh, wait. hold on, because Todd McFarlane said it himself. He said this himself. Where we failed as Image was writing. And
Yep.
Right, but
I agree.
what has Brandon Choi ever written? What has he ever written that was anyone taught? I remember Brandon Choi's what?
Yeah.
What?
No,
what?
I think the imbalance is always bad, no matter what direction it goes in.
Let me finish my point. So where I was going with it is that Image Comics was kind of coming out of like, we don't need a corporation, we don't need Marvel, we don't need those characters, we don't need writers. We're going to do it ourselves. And financially, they did prove it. They did show it in the numbers. And I even mentioned this to Rob Liefeld when we had that heart-to-heart some years back, and I said we just didn't have the writers. Like there is no Watchmen. There is nothing that really came out of those Image years that was substantial, that was like groundbreaking as far as like a story or a that changed the industry. It was kind of the whole Image thing as a collective that changed the image, the industry. It wasn't one book or one story. But having said that, there was a whole generation of writers that came up or were coming up that were becoming resentful that these guys were doing what they were doing without them. Right. And that it was almost like a middle finger to them. So then you have, not so much that Jeff Johns is that guy, but you have a generation of like the Brian Michael Bendises and Mike Miller and all these guys that came out. And then you start seeing superstar writers. You never had that really before. You had Alan Moore, you had a few, but you didn't have it like this.
Sorry,
and so
Art,
I think
one
it
second.
was.
Sorry, Art, 1 second. You said Mike Miller. Did you mean Mark Miller?
Yes.
Mark Miller, I'm sorry. Yeah, Mark Miller. Yeah. Or Millar. It depends on I think he says Miller, not Millar. Oh, look at this. Guide to Wizard.
Hey, look at that.
There you go.
This right here, and this is gonna piss some people off. Wizard, I feel, was part of the problem.
It was part, yeah.
Yes,
yeah. I love Wizard. I absolutely love Wizard. I love this hat, and it goes right up on the wall next to my skateboard for Critical Snake.
Oh, we lost you, dude.
Unmute yourself, Pixel.
Sorry, actually hit mute.
Yeah.
Anyway, it created that rock star mentality, or it perpetuated it.
Yeah,
it built that whole thing. It took what Image had and amplified it way beyond what Image could have done on its own, and it built all these guys up. So you're looking at Frank Miller going, man, he's badass. He writes all this stuff. He does all the art and everything is amazing. They ignored all the faults. Same thing with Alan Moore. Same thing with everybody else. And it was the top 10 this, top 10 that.
It was a fanboy book.
It just completely built that up. So you have writers and artists and stuff that grew up consuming that, going, I need to be that rock star every single time that they write something or do something now. And it's led us to this point 20 years later where we're all going, everybody's like, I got to have that point. I got to be that person. I got to be that pinnacle of success and stuff. And they don't give people enough room to do what they excel at. They want to do everything themselves.
It's a collaboration. And when all the talents are working together towards a common goal, that's when you have the best comic books. It's not when you have one guy on the book outshine the other guy. It's just, you're never going to get a successful comic that way. But comics have been, most of the comic books I've worked on have been pissing contests between the talent, even sometimes to the point of the colorist, trying to overshadow, What's that, Tom?
It's true.
Yeah. And I worked side by side with those Liquid guys, Chris and Aaron. We were sharing the same studio space, and we were working on all the same books. And there were times they were knocking out some of the line work that I was doing, and I would ask them, please, man, I spent an hour doing that stuff. I wanted to show. And then they would blur it or put some kind of special effect over it or whatever. And it didn't matter how many times I asked those guys, could you please just tone back on some of this stuff so that line art could shine? It never happened because that's it. It's the rock star mentality. You want to outshine the other guy. I think
I'm the lead singer here. You're the bassist. You shut the hell up.
Yeah, you know your place, know your position. But on the same at the same time, I do think that there was a generation of writers that grew up with, you know, image guys and all that stuff, and they were just like, screw you, you know, we're the rock stars. You're not the rock stars. You know what I mean? Because they were the ones that were exempt from all the image talk, really. When you, like you said, there weren't any real standout writers that came out of Image that, you know, like, ooh, this is a new writer and he came from Image Comics. It didn't really happen like that. You saw like J. Scott Campbell's and Dave Finch's and stuff like that, you know, and what is it, Michael Turner's and stuff like that. But you didn't really see new writers rise up out of Image Comics.
No.
So you're right, and I think there was a generation of writers that resented that and got angry about it.
Because if you look at the writers who did anything really significant, like Garth Ennis, they came from outside.
Yeah,
you know, when he went over to Stormwatch and Authority. You know,
well, even Neil Gaiman did some Image books. Alan Moore did some Image books. Like what's it, Robinson?
But they all came from outside and came in. There was nobody that went in and came out.
Right, I'm agreeing with you. They weren't fostered and grown from Image, you know, farm teams. They were already talent that came in. Yeah,
dude, you don't need good writing when you got freaking guys with guns like this. Come on.
But you know what? I mean, for the time, it worked, and I look back and I just go, it was a moment in time. And all you writers that have contempt, I know a lot of contemporary writers do have contempt for the Image years. I'd say, all right, create the success. Yeah. All right. If you, this is my challenge to you. If you're so hot shot and you think your shit doesn't stink, then why don't the numbers reflect that?
Yeah.
Where's your revolution?
This
you know
is their
I mean?
Image years. Like right now, this is their Image years.
Like right now, the industry is like shit.
Yeah.
So this is what happens when you give writers carte
blanche to do whatever they want.
Yeah, and then they start bringing an agenda and whatever else kind of social justice stuff that they want into the stories, and then, you know, we have where we're at. So now we can historically look back. Okay, who was right? Was Image right, or were the current state of writers?
I think they were both right and they're both wrong. Like I said, I think it's to make a truly great comic, you need a symbiosis. You need everybody to know their role.
I'd rather have the money.
Well,
can I,
them ducats.
Can I say something I learned after this election about these writers?
Okay.
Who might have been sort of being mandated by Marvel. Now, I don't think that anymore. They really are that. They're that woke. They've bought into this wokeness. It's not Marvel saying, hey, put all this wokeness into the comic and agenda and this, and it's the writers.
Oh yeah.
I was kind of like you too, Todd. I kind of thought it was an agenda that was driven on high, but I will say that it's an agenda that isn't being squashed by on high.
No, it's not.
Right. You know what I mean? So in some way, they are part of the problem as well. Like the editorial staff, the people that are overseeing Marvel and DC, you know, for like either turning a blind eye to it or giving the seal of approval to it. So either way, they're both kind of.
I'm sure Marvel's not saying to anybody, don't write superheroes versus supervillains for super stakes. I know they're not saying that. That can't be. So we're
I agree
getting. Yeah, I know. We're getting this group of talent that is coming from a different culture that doesn't really even understand what a good superhero comic is.
But the concept.
They're trying to round the characters and make them relatable to you and us.
They're trying to turn the characters into them.
Yeah.
Into themselves. That's what I said. That's why I asked that question earlier. Do you think that by injecting so much of the world today into these characters that they've removed the escapism, and that's why a lot of like young fans are like, I don't want to read this. I'll go watch manga where there's like dudes with giant muscles sword fighting. You know,
it could be, but also those other things can still exist at the same time that you're bringing in the real world, you know.
Well, I just don't think it works in the superhero medium. I think superheroes are a very specific, like I call them 4-color comics. They're very specific. Those kind of stories and stuff, they may work for 1 or 2 characters, but overall, I just don't think that they work very well. I think that they would work very well on their own.
Yeah, like if your entire universe is dealing with social issues, I think it becomes very one-dimensional and very boring, quite frankly. But when Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams did the Green Lantern Well-Traveled Heroes, you know, they were dealing with some social issues, but it wasn't the entire DC franchise. You know what I mean? Like, it was a book that was dealing with specific issues.
Yeah.
And that was it. You know, it didn't like reflect onto the entire universe. You didn't have Batman come in and start taking sides or start, you know, saying that girls need to be more, you know, highlighted or cross-gender or whatever it is, you know, agenda that they're bringing into these stories. You didn't see that. You know?
Yeah.
I've got a question
Go ahead.
for Pixel, if he's able to chime in.
No.
I don't know. Maybe. What's up?
So you're definitely in the same general age range as the rest of us, and so when the Image revolution happened, and Marvel still had something, you know, to prove. And I mean Marvel in the sense that the leadership, the editorial staff, the executives, and they were really worried after Image left, and they just put up astronomical sales numbers. I remember Marvel's being hungry to prove that they didn't need, quote unquote, the Image guys. And I remember for several years, they still seemed to put out some really good stuff. Did you have the same experience? And when do you think it turned?
So I can't really say exactly when it turned, because I left comics before the crash.
Okay.
So I didn't really get to see it. So my first Image book was Bloodstrike #1.
Okay.
And that opened the door for me, and I pretty much only collected Image with a few Marvel books, almost no DC. And but I remember there was a point when all those guys moved over to Image and everything started blowing up, that Marvel started going after the flashier artists and stuff. You had Joe Mad pop up, you had Stephen Platt, you had some really big names that got stolen at some point, but you had some big names hit and do the really, really flashy art, and they were still trying to kind of keep that thing going. Moon Knight exploded for a while there. There were some big titles that had a lot of power behind them still.
And the Kuberts never left.
And the Kuberts never left. Yeah, that was a big one too.
Junior. Yeah.
I mean, you saw the death of Superman happen around the same time.
96.
Yeah, there was a lot of things that they were still doing that was big, and they were still trying to keep the market, and they did pretty well, I thought.
Or 93, sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, go on.
No, but you're right, though. But they definitely were clawing at it, trying to capture the same thing. They just didn't have quite the same effect, because you had the spectacle off to the side, and it was just blowing up day and day. And again, kind of feeding back into that Wizard thing. Wizard was giving them covers all the time, was giving them promotion, showing everything, and the stores were embracing it because it was new. The paper was nice and bright. The colors were amazing. They just completely changed the game for comics, and so everybody was looking at that and not really paying attention to the other guys.
Well, I do want to say something about like the Wizard comics, because I met Gareb Shamus before Wizard even launched, and the thing is, it is kind of like those guys also built Wizard Comics, because all of those guys were the guys that embraced Wizard early on. So all the talent that became Image, if you notice, they all embraced Wizard early on. And I know this for a fact, because I remember those early conversations with Gareb. I saw all kinds of promise in Wizard Comics. And I remember I was doing Superman. I was working on the death of Superman, actually, like gearing up towards, you know, what is it? The reveal of Doomsday. And I brought it to Mike Carlin, who was the editor on Superman. And I said, there's this this new like fanzine, and it's called Wizard Comics, and they're really cool. And why doesn't DC Comics do anything with them? Because if you notice, like all that early Wizard stuff, there wasn't really a lot of DC stuff. It was all Marvel. And so I ran this by Mike, and Mike said DC doesn't get involved with like these type of ventures until they prove themselves to be worthy in the market. So he like DC doesn't lend their name to anything unless it proves itself in the market. And so I always thought that was really weird, but also I understood that those guys like McFarlane, Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, all those Image guys, they also built that magazine. They
were doing free covers and stuff too, right?
But Garib also said that Image helped build the magazine, but they helped killed it because they would not leave him alone. They were calling him 24/7. I got a new guy. You got to put his thing on the cover. It was like a nightmare for him to get out an issue, he said, because all of the Image guys always had new incoming talent. They were always vying for the cover, and they were offering real money. Like when Weapon Zero and what's his name he does the Steampunk Girl. They called it. I forget who it was. It was Mark Silvestri offered him $2,200 to make sure that he used Weapon Zero as a cover. He said it got to the point where I was either gonna not talk to them anymore, not answer their phone, or I had to kill the magazine. Is what he said.
Well, I mean, even Image comic books, you talk about gatekeeping. I mean, I was privy to a lot of conversations where people just weren't being considered. I remember Mark Bagley's name coming up, and they were like, Mark Bagley is not A-list. He's not an A-list artist, and he does not have a place here at Image Comics. And that's just one of the people that wasn't flashy enough to be Image Comics.
Yep.
And so that's kind of like, there was kind of a pedigree and to what was going on, and it was a really interesting time, and there was corruption, there was stuff like that happening.
Ego.
I remember, like, my office was across from Kurt Hathaway's and Marat Michaels. And I think this argument happened in Marat Michaels' office. So my office was right across the hall. And Garib, those guys, Garib used to, because he was the East Coast guy, he used to come in and hang out at Homage and Extreme Studios and stuff. And I remember the argument because I could hear it through the door. Rob and Garib were going at each other, and they were getting in the conversation of who made who. Like, that's how big the egos were. Like, Rob was like, we made you, your magazine. If we didn't embrace the magazine, you wouldn't have had shit. And then Garib's like, but I made you by putting you on the cover and all this other crap. And I was like, this is the most pointless bullshit. It doesn't even freaking matter. You guys are both rolling in dough. Who gives a shit? Like, those things, I never ever understand those. Like the whole, like the Rolling Stones, okay? Like, or a group that has been together for a long time, or an organization. They might hate each other's guts, right? Like, I hate you, I'm going to kill you, but this makes good business. You know what I mean? Us staying together, it brings in revenue. People love it. The us together is better than us apart. Like, the greater good is being served or whatever. And so I never quite understood that. Like, so on top of all this money and attention that you're getting, you still need 100% credit for like something. Like, it's out of your realm of comprehension that it could be just a synergy of both of you together,
right?
That can't even.
It's me.
It's just me. Yeah,
it's all about me. Real quick, man. I don't know if you guys. I speaking of 4Colors, because I started typing in 4Color comics and stuff like that. I found a pretty awesome site here, man. It's called 4Color Comics. and it's they sell 4-color comics. Check this out, man. Hang on a minute, I'll share my screen. This is actually pretty cool.
Are you ready?
Yeah, check this out. Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age, pulps. Like, look at this, man. Some of these are pretty affordable. And look at this. Like, you got like Action Comics, you know, $4.37, you know, for like it's like $28. Got one here for $8.
That's what what's his name was saying that he wanted to do with Diamond, like where he would
Steve Jeppy.
I've got this one right here.
Yeah, I have that too. You know, to have some kind of like back issue vintage kind of library where like retailers could go back and get any vintage comic that they wanted. Look at that cover, Jim Aparo.
Wow, that's so awesome, man. $10, Art.
Cover. How much?
$10.
Oh, I could still buy it. I probably have it somewhere, but it's in bad shape.
Some of my favorite Batman images were drawn by Jim.
Oh, wait. Oh, I'm sorry. You got to go up to that Spectre. It's in the upper left corner.
That one? Oh, or this one.
Left corner.
There you go.
Oh. Holy shit. I'll tell you, his Jim Aparo, I don't know who wrote it, but his run on Adventure Comics on the Spectre was flawless, man. I still remember some of those stories. They were, oh my God, they were great. And I'm convinced that this gave birth to the Crow, because what Spectre did in those stories is he would take the villain down by whatever vice the villain had.
Yeah.
So if the killer drowned people, the Spectre would like bring that guy to the point of drowning. You know what I mean? He could see what it was like, what he did to this other person. And I do remember there was one where the guy was cutting people up. Like, it got pretty graphic, like with a saw or something like that. And so the Spectre turned the guy into a plank of wood, and then the guy comes in the next day and just cuts the guy into a bunch of little planks. I was like, oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Wow. There's some really good ones in here, man.
Hey, I want to say something about Florida Man, just so we have enough people here.
Okay.
If anyone wants one of those tiers where you're a valet, you bring the wrestler in, that's like 8 pages you'll be on, because you're going to have an entrance, and then you'll be around the ring, and you're actually, at some point, I'm going to have one of their managers interact in the match, and then the managers themselves will go at it. So you're on like 8 pages. So if you want that, contact me. I'll lower the price of it, and we'll do it a different way, you know.
Oh, and also, you guys, as always with Pontificators, Florida Man links are in the description, and so are the Chrono links. And I believe the Thomas Moira.
Yeah.
Yep. I threw them all in there.
Yeah. Well, it's also in the description as well. So you guys check out those books, especially Chrono Mechanics. I mean, if you had to pick out of the 3, I highly suggest Chrono Mechanics. Because you're going to get way more bang for your buck.
By the way, if you want to buy that tier as a gift, if you want your girlfriend in it or your wife or whatever, I'll work on an outfit with her. Because a valet is a manager, and valet, the females don't call them managers; they call them valets. They're just brought into the ring by.
They're the eye candy.
Yeah, so just let me know. We can work something out at a lower price.
Cool.
Because it's getting near the end. One person had bought one of those and then backed out.
Oh, okay. So you have an opening for it, yeah.
Yeah.
Art Blue Samurai Zero said, "Art, pitches like this always bring me to tears."
Get it?
Come on.
Come on.
I think that's a good place to end this, man.
That's comedic gold. You know what? I miss you, Bob. Sometimes you don't do the streams because I always wait for you to go. That's it. Let's end the stream. Like
the energy's sapped, man. Let's go.
Let's leave it on a high point. Yeah, on a high note. Yeah, definitely, you guys. So there's 3 books we just plugged. Go check them out. There's a lot of great Comicsgate books. Ethan still has, all kinds of frog books up. So go check those out. Cyberfrog. I think that my buddy Dan Frega, his Black Flag is still up in demand. So go check out these books. There's a bunch of great books, and I'm hoping to soon have Stefani Rene on a Hacks chat and do a one-on-one and really put a spotlight on that book because it deserves it. It's a gorgeous book, unlike Florida Man.
Yeah, and thanks to everybody that.
Wait. Okay, unlike Florida Man.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks to
how we say goodbye.
Yeah, thanks to all the new people that shut up, man. Rob Hunter, dude, we gotta get you on here one of these days.
Yeah, Rob, anytime, man. Just contact me through DMs, man. I would love to hear your point of view. We've talked, before, and Rob is not a guy that's afraid to speak, and I think that this industry really needs more people. I think it's a very humble industry, and a lot of people are afraid, so they don't say anything. And I do believe if more people express themselves, then maybe we could have done something earlier on, before we were almost at the point of no return, which I hope the industry isn't. But we're definitely, I think what you can take from this Pontificators is that the industry definitely is changing. Print medium isn't dead, but it is changing. It's not going to be what it used to be. And we're pretty much in agreement that the monthly floppies are probably going to go the way of the dodo. We were still unclear that digital would be the savior, right? Is that verdict still kind of?
I think whether it's the savior or not, it's the future.
Right, but it also can't be the same cover. You know what I mean? It can't be the same cover price.
No,
you're not you're not getting it. You're not owning it. You're just getting to view it.
It's
but like you said, if it is reasonable in price, then so be it. And I also think I'm old enough to remember DevX, the DevX system, which was Hollywood trying to control your media with movies and stuff. So they were like, you don't own it, you just can download it to your appliance. And Hollywood was all about it because then they could control everything 100%. Right. Well, they never let that go. So now we're streaming and we're doing all this stuff. So I do think more and more, you guys were talking about like changing people's way of viewing things, over years and stuff, conditioning people. Well, I think that we've got to this place where people have gotten conditioned to not have a physical, tangible piece of media. Mm-hmm. So I think, me personally, I think it's inevitable that we're going to get into some kind of subscription comic book type of sites, and that whether Marvel and DC embrace this or not, I don't know, but there are a lot of other people that are doing it and that are successful at it. So for the sake of this conversation in this moment in time, and I want to hear what you guys have to say as well, I think it's the only thing, digital downloads are the only thing right now that seems tangible, that can move us into a brighter future, and we can get more of these stories into people's hands, which is what it should be all about. How do you feel, Joe?
You know what? Sorry.
Go ahead.
That's all right. Go ahead, Todd.
One thing that they could do, right? Because remember, you go to Comicology and they take, I think it's like $1 per or whatever, a half or whatever.
Yeah.
But if Marvel and DC were to create their own, it'd be more immersive. Maybe it was linked to other things like cartoons and stuff, and even what's coming up. And those trailers that they make for comics were there. If this was like entertaining and fun, leave Comicology behind.
Yeah,
because it's dull and boring, and they take more of your money than you get. So
and from the customer side, the interface absolutely sucks. And I don't just say that as somebody who doesn't read digital comics. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people who love digital comics as, research for my own efforts, down the road. And all of them, not a single one of them like Comixology. And I've talked with a guy. I'll make this real quick. I talked with a guy who specializes in digital application integration, and I was shocked to find out how easy it would be to set up an interface that would blow Comixology out of the water.
It's not well put together.
That's one of the things that I've got in kind of behind the scenes have been working on, and really all it takes is funding. So I guess I would just say stay tuned, because there are some of us who are working on much better ways to deliver that sort of content.
Yeah. How do you feel, Bob? Do you think that digital's the savior?
I think digital is one of the factors. Yeah. I think they have to embrace the new mediums that are coming out. And the only way that's the only way you're going to like compete with all these other forms of escapism.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everything is seemingly going that way. When you're looking at movie theaters potentially going out of business too, which we didn't even touch on, you know, like the way we consume entertainment is changing. It's changing very, very quickly. So, you know, why not comics as well?
Well, it's not just us. It's them. It's the future. It's the current now. Like I said, everybody's got one of these in their pocket.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And and I don't think physical medium will ever go away completely, but it's going to have to turn into what we're talking about. It's going to have to turn into omnibuses and like, you know, those collected formats or digest form. But for the monthly stuff, for the periodical, it's got to be in digital form. And even then, I think you're going to have to go with a collected version.
Yeah, I agree. So Todd, parting shots.
Back Florida Man, because there's only a limited time. I'm halfway done. It's gonna ship they raise the prices of shipping anyway, right? And it doesn't go back to normal till after the 27th of December. So we're not shipping
right now,
then.
Todd, you're getting on Bob's nerves right now.
No, I'm good. No, go, dude. I'm
Bob's like, come on, man. Yeah, no plugging. We got to go.
Dude, if that were the case, I'd just leave.
Parting shot. You know what? Whatever the future is for comics, buy them because you enjoy them, and start telling people why you enjoy them. Yeah,
get the word out, and back Florida Man, because it's a great book. Mike Barron and Todd Mulrooney. It's a winning combination right there. And I'm gonna let Edwin have the final.
Yes.
So Art finally read Chrono. It was really a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Edwin. You did not have to pay me $2 to say that. I would have read it anyways, but thank you so much. I do appreciate it. Thanks to all of you guys. I missed this show for the last couple of weeks. I mean, I didn't just miss it by not doing it, but I missed it just being here and hanging out with you guys. So hope to get it back online and keep trying to entertain you guys with great shows. And thanks to Pixel Trader for coming in. Thanks for like Zach coming in for the time he was in. And thanks to Nasser for coming in, setting the light on everything. And thanks for
bring back the old days. Kick Nasser.
Kick Nasser. Kick him. All right, you guys. Take care. Talk to you soon.